Hi, everyone. I'm expecting two more commissioners to join, so we'll just wait for them and then we'll get started. All right, whole gang's here. Let's get this started. We have a pretty packed agenda tonight. So before we get started, there are two proposed agenda items that I would like to vote on to put on the agenda. One is to consider a resolution regarding the Adams Middle School renovation. And then the other proposed agenda item is a presentation by the Adams Morgan bid regarding three proposed 18th Street closure events throughout the summer and fall. Does anyone want to second that?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, it's unanimous. We will add those to the agenda. So we're going to start tonight with a presentation by DCPS regarding the Adams Middle School modernization project. So if you are here to present about that, please raise your hand so Sean can make you a panelist. Ione.
Hi.
Are you expecting anyone else, or is it just the two of you?
Just want to make sure. Oh, okay. So our design team is here. Might just be us for tonight.
Okay, great.
Okay. So ready when you are, Dave? Good to go?
Yeah, we're set. We've got our presentation. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and the project, and then we'll do our part?
For sure. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Oni Gass. I'm the director for the Facilities Planning and Design team here at DCPS. Tonight, I'm here with the Oyster Adams Education Campus Modernization Project team. And for this project specifically, we are talking about the Adams campus. So tonight we'll hear a little bit from the design team, Studio MB, to discuss and to present the historical preservation efforts being proposed for this project. So a little background about the project, just to orient us all. We are currently in the beginning phases of the project, where we recently presented concept designs and held two meetings for the community, one on May 1st, and then again on May 8th, to the school improvement team or a SIT team and school leadership to gather feedback on those designs. And based on the designs, I'm specifically highlighting some feedback and response regarding proposed playfield, and only mentioning that because we did just receive the resolution from the ANC. I just want to note that we are also planning to provide a follow-up SIT meeting on May 23rd to formally present the changes that we're able to further consider. And so tonight we'll see a little bit of that development tonight. We do feel like it is important to the preservation conversation that we're having held by Studios MB. So I'm here to answer any specific questions about the education specifications or district-wide standards as we're thinking of introducing to the project, which will basically align and ensure alignment for all modernization projects across the board and for school future growth for the school. So I'll turn it over to Dave and Maisha now.
Thank you. I'm happy to be back with you all again. We met with you all back in February when we were kicking off the project to let you know that it was coming and that we were interested in introducing ourselves, and we would be back to you all once we had some ideas about what can and will work on the site. And that's what we're going to walk you through tonight. There is, as you'll see, we're surrounded by historic properties. We are an individually we're not individually listed, but we're a contributing structure. And so there's a requirement for us to go not just through the Historic Preservation Office, but also through the Historic Preservation Review Board. Our hope is to be in front of them in their June hearing. And so we have a couple of weeks between now and the full ANC where we'll hopefully be able to get your all's thoughts on the development that we're going to share with you tonight and what may happen, in the coming weeks as we continue to evolve the design. So let me go ahead and have Markeisha. I'm joined by Markeisha Powell, Senior Associate at our office. She and I will kind of tag team on the presentation here, and Oni and I and Markeisha will take questions at the end. We're happy to share this presentation with you. It is something that we have shared now in some sort of fashion with the SIT. There has been some development that we have taken into consideration since the meeting we had with the school improvement team. We've also had an initial conversation with the Historic Preservation Office and the Commission of Fine Arts staff, and have gotten their thoughts as well. And so this is a regularly paced set of meetings, and we're incorporating comments and improvements as we go along. So I am principal here at Studio MB, but we are part of a larger design build team that consists of Consigli Construction Company and Keystone Plus, both very capable contractors who work on historic properties of this nature. Next. So Markeisha and I'll tag team throughout the presentation, but we basically want to walk you through our existing site analysis. We're here to present what we see as the site analysis. We did have a very successful set of input sessions with the school improvement team where we had a meeting on the campus of Adams, and then we also set up during a parent-teacher conference day where we got their input, and we see this as a dialogue about how we see the site and making sure that what we're interpreting is in fact how other folks see it. I think that there is alignment there. We're not going to share that SIT feedback with you all, but there is materials that we've shown them of the feedback we got from them and just some interesting takeaways that we learned. And then we're going to share with you our design concept at the stage that we're at. And again, as I mentioned, we're hoping to be back in front of the full ANC in early June, and expect that we'll probably be talking to you all again between now and then. Next. Okay, so let me just start on this part, and then Markeisha and I'll go through it. As this is fine. As I mentioned in our last conversation with you all are well aware of how dense the neighborhood is at the Adams campus. It is a very small, oops, I think it's going to time. Yeah. So go to full screen. So it is a very dense urban site. It is bounded mainly by the triangle that's defined by 19th Street, Columbia Road, and the Hilton to the south. Our site fronts 19th Street and is, butted up against the Wyoming on the backside of the alley. And there is a very thin alley access that happens between those two buildings that is on paper a 12-foot alley, but in fact is only 11 feet because there's a light pole that's actually installed in the paving there. So it's an 11-foot alley to get to the rear of the school. And there's some interesting topographic challenges we'll talk about. Of course, there's a lot of traffic on Florida Avenue and Connecticut Avenue. There's a lot of traffic on Columbia Road, and 19th Street certainly sees peaks throughout the course of the day. We are doing a traffic study, and that'll be part of the team's effort over the next, they're actually out there counting cars next week. Next slide. This is just a slide that we've developed showing the access to the site. One of the things we learned from the school improvement feedback sessions was that those two front steps, which are part of the issue that we're going to be grappling with, accessibility, both of those are used about the same amount, and it's about a third each by the community coming and going from the school. And interestingly, about a third of the community that responded told us they come through the alley where that red arrow is. That alley, as I mentioned, is quite narrow. It is also used for access to parking for the apartment buildings that are back there. And as you can see, our neighbors to the north and to the west are abutting us on that alley on the west, and then right up against our property on the north. And then, of course, the yellow arrow that shows the access to the soccer field and playgrounds that are used by the neighborhood in the hours that the fences are open there. So that's a public access to the rear of the site currently. Next. This is a very interesting slide. I like to point out that, this is basically an 8-story building. So if you take the corner of our lot at its lowest point at 0 and go to that back alley, that is 43 feet in elevation change. The building itself, from our low point of the site to the terrace that's in front of it, is about a 22-foot wall at that corner that rises up to about a 7-foot wall at the north corner of the line. And then the building itself is 85 feet above our low spot. So we are dealing with a very vertical condition, of which the school is not, we're not proposing to go any taller. The Historic Preservation Office would love for us to keep our addition below the ridge of the 85 feet. We think that's important to do as well. And so all of our schemes have considered that. And then I'll go to the next slide. This is a slide showing the adjacent heights. As I mentioned, our school is about a 4-story building in terms of occupancy above that terrace, but in height, it's about 8 stories from the street. Of course, we're surrounded by some very tall buildings, and then the single family and row house kind of neighborhood of 3- and 4-story structures in the Kalorama district to the right of us on the map there on the east side of 19th Street. Next. One of the things we think is very important to take into consideration on the site is the time of year that the students are there and when they're outside. And so we did these sun studies fairly early to show the effects of the Wyoming and the Hilton on the site. And so these are done from the fall, the winter, and the spring. And so when you do these, the equinox is mid-September and mid-March, and we like to go 1 month in either direction. So our fall is in October and our spring is in April, because October would be, September and March would be the same for spring and fall. So what we're seeing here across the bottom is that in October, the rear of the site is heavily in shadow, particularly in the southwest and southeast corner of the lot. In the winter, the whole site is basically shadowed. But in the spring, you do start to get good shadows across the majority of the site, of course, until the school year's out in June. Next slide. Just a couple of things about how some of the things we've learned about the site. We have the veranda that I mentioned is 22 feet tall at its tallest corner, and in front of that are 4 donor trees that 2 are full grown and 2 are actually quite small, because urban forestry let us know that they had actually taken out 2 trees at one point, and then were contacted by the young woman's father who passed away. Her father reached out to let them know that these donor trees were done in her name, and so they've replanted 2 donor trees. So there's 2 young donor trees and 2 mature cherry trees there that we're trying to avoid. Additionally, there is trash that is accessed off of the alley. The site doesn't have currently loading and unloading and berth as required by zoning, but there is a trash area there. And then there's an existing parking lot, which is striped for 22 spaces. And then the existing playground and playfield, which I'll show in a different view here in a second, that I mentioned are publicly accessible. Next slide. And then from the rear, you can kind of see this same slide. The existing playfield, which is a fenced turf soccer field with goals, the existing play yards, which includes a basketball hoop and some climbing equipment, and then the existing parking lot and small trash area that is off of that alley. Next slide. And then finally, again, we are a contributing structure within the Washington Heights Historic District. That means we are looking for your support to treat this historic property with as much sensitivity as we think it deserves. And one thing to note is that the maps for the Washington Heights Historic District do not include the Hilton, but that is in fact individually listed and does fall within the boundaries. So we are surrounded on all sides by contributing structures, and in fact are contributing ourselves. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so here we started to analyze in 3 dimensions sort of our existing context and how we exist within along 19th Street. So in this particular slide, we're looking at this plane, this vertical plane that's created by a series of facades starting at the north with these 8-story plus multifamily projects, and then how that plane aligns with the base of our wall for the veranda. And it's worth noting that that wall, that's our property line, is punctured by those stairs that Dave was mentioning earlier. And then that wall sort of continues, seemingly to align with, at least and how you would perceive it with the plinth of the Washington Hilton. And what you can see here, hopefully, are there are dashed lines that really start to talk about gaps within that horizontal and vertical plane that happens along 19th Street. And so here we were just starting to analyze what opportunities there are for potential addition within this context of this very strong plane along 19th Street. And then, so we have that, and then our facade, our primary facade, is then set back from our veranda wall by about 20 feet. And so it's interesting just to see what that creates, which you'll see here. We start to think about the bookends that are created, right? So we have our facades pushed back, we have our veranda, these tall buildings then turn towards us, creating these bookends that, you know, we're starting to think about how should we respond to that and what that space is really feeling like when you're standing on this veranda. The other thing that's really strong and worthwhile in terms of exploring is the horizontal plane that's created from that veranda and how that again aligns with the plinth of the Hilton. And again, it starts to make us scratch our heads and think about what happens in this trapezoidal zone that we have that's currently sloping up. And then we pull all those together just to really hit home on all the sort of monumental scale of our school, as well as how we're sort of framed by the Washington Hilton and then the multifamily projects to the north, and how we sort of, what our response would be in terms of how we think about that vertically, as well as the horizontality of the veranda. And again, really honing in on what's happening in this gap that's happening between the horizontal and the vertical continuation.
So just a couple of context photos, and it's important to note some of the conversations we've been having in our dialogue with the Commission of Fine Arts staff and the Historic Preservation Office. Obviously, this is a very majestic building that sits back from the street that they are very sensitive to. I will tell you, it is in very intact condition on the inside and very much so on the outside. We do not want to modify that facade. We want to clean it up and repoint it and make it beautiful and look new again, but we aren't proposing anything significant on the facade that would be towards the street. They are very keen on the view that you see in the big image to the right, which is the view up as you're walking up 19th Street, and we've shown that to them, and they agree with us that that plane of the veranda, the plane of the front property line, and then the plane of the wall behind the veranda are things for us to play off of, which I'll show you here in just a few moments. Of course, the rear of the site, we're going to talk about the parking. We're going to talk about the community's concern on the ability to have outdoor play space, which you see there in the top right, top middle, and we'll get to that here in just a second. This is a photo of the 19th Street, the west side, particularly the loading that happens when the street widens by the Hilton. There are, I think, 6 different loading capacity pieces along that facade of the Hilton. There's a lot of trucks that are backing up and into that portion of the site. And then, of course, the 8-story buildings that are to the north of us that you see there. Some blank walls and a stair from the Hilton on the bottom right. Next slide. This is on the opposite side of the street of us. Some weird thing happening on our fuzzy there. I hope you can hear us. This is across the street. These are the Calorama kind of lower scale buildings that are directly across the street from the school. You know, predominantly 4-story structures, and there's this magnificent one which used to be the Chinese embassy, the top right photo that you see there, with these interesting bays and kind of two-tone limestone and brick components. Then you get to the 4-story kind of apartment buildings that folks are familiar with there. Next slide. And then, of course, once you turn down the 2 side streets, the scale starts to change. There are row houses, 3- and 4-story row houses, and again, a few kind of pristine mansions like you see there on the bottom left that have been converted. And then lastly, along Florida Avenue and Columbia Avenue, these are very busy roads with very high buildings that define the kind of the triangle within which we're set.
Okay, so here, you've heard us talk about this circa 1929 colonial revival style building and how it is in really good shape, actually. And so we have engaged with HPO and CFA early to talk about which spaces on the interiors that we should be mindful of, that we should be careful of and restore, all within the sort of scope of trying to deliver you all a modernized educational facility. So just starting with the first area that we've identified as sort of precious and to be preserved is the lobby. In the pictures here, you can see that there's quite a bit of existing molding. There's wainscoting along the walls. And so we'll be working closely with our partners at Consigli and DGS, as well as our historic consultant and CFA and HBO to make sure that this is restored and continues to be an example of those original details. Additionally, there's the auditorium that we all know. I think if everyone's been in that space, it's probably one of the nicest auditoriums of this era in the city, and that we have sort of very, very grateful to have the opportunity to work within this. You can see the stage has beautiful molding. There's a fantastic proscenium, functional stage in the back of this. It's like, oh wow, this is done really well. It has the height, storage to the left and right. And then of course at the ceiling, you have the crown molding and the existing plaster. So again, we will be working to maintain as much of that detail as possible. There's the corridors. So the corridors have a terrazzo flooring, as well as these sort of intermediate partitions that have sort of the transom and the side lights that will also be preserving. We'll be working on the final doors, but in terms of this sort of portal that leads you along this way, we'll working on maintaining that. There are some elements you may be familiar with. The wall towel will probably be removed, but the priority again would be to maintain the terrazzo floor and these original partitions. And then lastly, there are some covered skylights that originally served as lay lights. So these skylights provided light to level 3, which I think is quite awesome. We already have a generous amount of natural light, but in addition to that, they had these really cool skylights. And so you can see here that we've identified these as opportunities for restoration. And in particular, we're trying to preserve and restore 2 of these skylights to their original function of lay lights as a sort of exhibit to the students to actually have that experience at the 3rd floor, that you have natural light coming in here. And here's a picture of it within the classroom. And then of course, sadly, that is covered with paper when you go up into the attic. But that'd be a priority of ours as we modernize the project.
And those were identified on our site walk with the Historic Preservation Office. This is a very important structure to them, and it's unlike some of the other schools that we've worked on in the district. They feel very strongly about the preservation of this one, and quite frankly, we've worked on schools where we might have disagreed about that interpretation, but this is really a magnificent structure, and their interests align with our interests, and I think the school community's interested hard. Adams Morgan is named after the Adams School. It's a really important feature of the neighborhood. It's a beautiful structure. We want to preserve that, and we are in alignment with Historic Preservation Office, and I think CFA's staff agrees that it's a magnificent structure. So how do we think about adding pieces to this to get a modernized school that'll give the students here who range from 4th through 8th grade? And I think that's important to understand that these are elementary school kids mixed in with middle schoolers. So if you have kids, and I've had kids that were 6th grade daughters and mixing with 8th grade boys is something I was sensitive to. And in this campus, you've got 4th and 5th graders mixing with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. So it is a challenge to have those all operationally together, and to try to do that with a modernized school in this footprint is what we're going to talk about in just a second. So go to the next slide. So we've kind of defined what are some of the major exterior considerations that we have to take into account. First of all, there's no getting around the density of this urban site and how little space there exists on this lot, and how wonderful the community absorbs all of this and uses that. When you walk by this school, which we do very often, our office is only 4 blocks south of here, there are kids on this terrace and you know it's a school if you pay attention to it walking by. They are quite elevated, but the laughter that you hear throughout the day up there and the playfulness that happens after school up there, you see kids stretching from the running club or from the basketball team because the gym is so small, stuffed into that auditorium. It is a dense urban site. We have a lot of things we want to accomplish on this site. And the priority there is to provide an equitable set of facilities, indoor and out, to what the rest of the district students are getting. And so that's the challenge about the dense urban site. The other thing that we've pointed out to the Historic Preservation Office is there is no equitable, accessible entry. We can't just have the accessible entry come through the basement because then it's not equitable. And so we need to create an entry that is accessible off of 19th Street that allows for equitable access to students who may not be able to do the stairs and parents as well. And then finally, there is a significant requirement from DOE to treat 100% of the stormwater on site with green roofs and other things. So it's contribute really to our pursuit of LEED for schools on this project. But that is not something that we can take lightly. It's a very dense urban site that we have to retain stormwater on. And so that means we're going to have green roofs on the new portions, and we're going to need rain gardens throughout the site to pick up runoff. Next slide. Then when you get to the interior of the school, of course, how do we take this large building and use the footprint of what we have and maximize the square footage that isn't being used? And so what you're seeing on these images is Markeisha walking through the attic. That is under the 85-foot mark. If you walk in at 0, she's 85 feet. Well, okay, she's 70 feet in the air. It's 85 to the ridge. So she is up in the attic. There's opportunity there, we all agree, to open up the rear of that to get classrooms into this space and plenty of height. There is likewise under the veranda, very dark, but excavated space that the Historic Preservation Office would like us to utilize to whatever degree we're able to. However, they do not want to penetrate that wall with windows. And then finally, there's a large mechanical room that we're putting some classrooms into, particularly music classrooms, to take advantage of the height. And then there's the using any kind of shaft space along the corridor walls that we can to enlarge the classrooms to modern standards. These classrooms are almost big enough for current classrooms. And so we're able to use those as they are currently laid out in a lot of places if we take away the shaft space that's behind those walls. And then finally, there is a strong push to balance all of these historic elements inside and outside with a modernized program of education specifications. Next. So the design concept. So let me just walk you through some of the steps, and then I'll show the site plan so that we can talk, and we'll pause there and take questions. And I know those are already coming, but let me go ahead and go through the design concept, which is 4 or 5 slides here. So can you click forward? Mm-hmm. So you remember, we're talking about the density of the site. There is a very large program that we are trying to condense into the southeast corner of the site to allow the sunniest and brightest parts of the site to become play space, with the intention of moving parking over in the corner on the rear of the alley. That would keep our addition as far away as possible, on the rear at least, from those tall buildings of the Wyoming and those ones that are really cheek to jowl with the alley on the right-hand side of this page. What that means is that we are going to locate a new accessible entry at the lowest level, so that you're walking in at 0, and then we'll pop up a dormer so that that blue that you see there will be up in the attic at 70 feet. So you're 70 feet above the entry. This is a very vertical building, and that is a very vertical school. I don't think anybody would design a 7-story school if they didn't have to. And so we kind of have to. So we have a 7-story building here, and part of that is a modernized program that includes a gym. And so the gym is what you see there, tucked into the corner of the site that is located where that existing soccer field is. We've got a lot of feedback from the SIT, very concerned comments about the lack of a replacement field for that existing soccer field. Whether that soccer field were to stay there or we were to put the gym somewhere else on the site, there is a loss of footprint on the site in order to accommodate this modernized program. And again, we call this the stacks because with that entry that you see on the left, we're trying to put as much program over there so that the addition doesn't grow. And that will have, we've talked with the school, about whether the library wants to be up in the attic or in a more equitable position in the kind of addition there on the left. And the librarian was very adamant that he did not want the library to be an afterthought in the attic, but he liked the current library, which by the way is only 900 square feet, and the new library will be 3,600 square feet, to give you a sense of the difference between what they have and what we're offering. He wanted that to be very close to the entry. And so we're going to work hard to make sure that the library spaces, and this has been done elsewhere in DCPS, the library spaces work with the kind of flow of students that might come through there. And that's things that will be continuing to be developed. But the school has chosen the library to be in this portion of the site. Next. So very quickly, Markeisha kind of walked you through our analysis of the existing facade and entry veranda that you see there on the left. I've talked about where we are locating our addition spaces because we are trying to maximize open space on the rear of the site. We need to provide an equitable, accessible entry at the lowest point of this. And so we are proposing in that trapezoid shape that Markeisha referred to, an entry pavilion, and then a piece above that that will contain the library. On the roof of the existing building, we're maximizing the rear of that attic and putting classrooms facing out the back. And then under those skylights that Markeisha mentioned, we are putting rooms that will be lit through those reopened skylights. 2 of those will remain as lay lights down to the 3rd floor classrooms. We're taking advantage of that. And then of course the gym in its scale and location is starting to relate to the scale and size of the auditorium, which is the cafeteria auditorium in our proposed renovation. Next slide. So with that kind of understanding, we extrude up all of the program on the left-hand slide there in step 2 so that we maximize all those heights that we can. Again, we're talking about a 7-story building with the attic. We create as tall of a pavilion as we in the Historic Preservation Office feels like we are able to along that sensitive street edge, and then have the gym in the rear. Then we started to think about how do we take that pavilion and align that with the historic elements of the veranda that you see there in yellow and the red of that historic facade that you see there. And then our last step is to create a welcoming and open library, because as I said, the joy of kind of walking by this building in the middle of the day is the kids on the veranda. I really enjoy that. And again, our office is right south of here. So we want to place the library off of that terrace. So there's a reading terrace off of the library, which is the yellow that you see there, and then the entry pavilion there. That would be the main entrance. This will be continued to be developed. There have been questions about the use of the exterior space and whether some of this stuff could be stacked elsewhere. And I just wanted to show a slide that we have recently developed since we got the feedback from the SIT that we've shared with the yes, and this is a site plan that proposes a soccer field of compatible dimensions compared to what is currently out there, located in the sunnier part of the site. We have added the zoning requirements for trash loading and a berth over there, and we are matching the 22 parking spaces that are required by zoning, which are existing on site. And we're defining play spaces that will be vertical play spaces. We're working with the landscape architect who has done Swamp Doodle Park, if you're familiar with this vertical kind of playground over in Capitol Hill near the REI, so that we can maximize the use of outdoor play spaces. Now, we have heard from the administration that the play spaces are used predominantly by the 4th and 5th graders, and that the middle schoolers tend to hang out on the play field, the soccer field, and they fully expect that they will hang out on the gym, which will be permeable and open up towards these outdoor spaces. So with that said, I know there's some questions in the chat, and I'm going to ask Oni to, so that's as far as we got. We were going to come with a little bit more development on the pavilion. We did have a conversation with HPO and CFA, and they asked us to look at a couple of things which we're in the midst of doing. So we want to come back to you all and talk a little bit about that eventually. I have a slide that shows our proposed materials, but I do want to stop and start to address some questions, and I'll let Oni kind of decide whether she wants to take a question or push it towards me. But Chairman Dixon, I'll let you kind of step back in.
Sure. Well, thank you very much for that presentation. This was very informative, and this is clearly a very difficult project to navigate considering the steepness of the grade. I did have one question. Can you just tell me how many parking spaces are currently there and how many you're suggesting? You said is 22. How many are currently there?
22.
Oh, it's currently 22. Okay.
22. So we surveyed the lot. We got the survey after we last met with you. There are 22 spaces, but in full disclosure, the school has told us they packed that thing triple parked. I'm not going to speculate on the safety concerns that could raise. That's really an operational thing that I'm not here to talk about. But if somebody had to get home to an emergency, or somebody had to get in an emergency vehicle, had to get into the school, they're pushed to the 19th Street entrance. They have to go up all those steps if you're getting a stretcher up. I think operationally, it's something that I would not suggest is something that should be emulated, but they are parking more cars than the 22 spaces out there. So in full disclosure, that doesn't meet code, it doesn't meet zoning, but, and we're not going to be able to design something that would allow you to triple park and not have adequate access by fire truck or whatever to get to the rear of the building.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the concerns that I was hearing from the community was, the taking away of the soccer field, but this concept seems to put that back in, and I think you did a really great job with this. I'm going to open it up for comments and questions from my fellow commissioners, and then we will open it up to the public. Commissioner Falaschini.
Thank you very much. So there was a question in the chat earlier, and I think it just begs the question, but why not increase the density and the size of the building? Right now, the building, Adams School as is, doesn't even serve the majority of middle school students in Adams Morgan. It only serves middle school students in Adams Morgan west of 18th Street. And if we were to increase the size of it, then potentially we could increase the degree to which the school is actually serving our entire neighborhood, which, not to put too fine a point on it, but the name of the neighborhood came from the desegregation of our schools. And yet the Adams School primarily serves the traditionally white communities of our neighborhood. And it would be great if it could be opened up to the traditionally more diverse sections of Adams Morgan. But I don't see how that would be possible without increasing the size of the building. So was there a conscious decision not to do that?
I'm going to let Oni take that because it's really about enrollment and capacity, which is increasing.
Yes, thank you. So I think David summarized that very nicely. When we're talking about the modernization program and basically we're building to future growth for the school, we are following the 10-year projections that are set by the district through the Master's Facilities Plan set by the DME, the Office of the Deputy Mayor of Education. So for that number that we're tracking is actually, one second, I do have it up. The design capacity is actually 542, which is for a specific program that's here now. It actually is an increase of students because we're currently sitting at about 375 students currently in the building. So we are thinking of future growth for the building. And so I can't speak totally to how the DME kind of creates their projections, but I do know that it does include feeder growth. So basically looking at what's happening at Oyster, but then also what's happening in the neighborhood. I also know that the DME is also housing and starting their boundary study. So I do think this might be a great conversation to maybe partner. We can try to figure out, I can help you partner with them with any open town halls or conversations to make sure that we're having equal representation, since that is a concern from this community.
If I could just add, Oni, on the specificity of increasing the size, Commissioner Falaschini, we're going from 31,000 square feet of net programmed area to 56,000 square feet. That's an increase of 25,000. That's almost doubling, but not quite. I think we're doing as much as we can to minimize its impact on the lot. But we are almost doubling the scale of the programs that are offered. The other thing that I would add is that we are moving from a building that has about 19 classrooms, of which 2 are not even being used as classrooms, to 28 classrooms. So hopefully that answers that question.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And I trust that you all are very concerned about those equity impacts, as I think other members of our community are. So thank you. The other question I just wanted to ask was, there was another comment in the chat, and I have wondered the same thing. Is there the possibility of doing a double stack garage in that north? No, sorry, that's not north. That's that southwest corner of the lot, in order to increase the parking availability there?
So it actually is against DCPS policy to provide structured parking. We've moved away from that as a model, thinking of how much it actually costs to put in structured parking, wanting to add that space back to usable program space for our students. And so, as we're having these conversations, thinking about the additional space that we need to add, as well as prioritizing green space here, our budget is not infinite, right? We do have a finite budget, so we do want to try to focus and prioritize student-facing spaces.
That makes sense. I meant where the existing parking is on that design that we're looking at, like upper left-hand corner. Not to take away from any like student facility space, but to just double up the size of where that lot is. But I fully understand if that is not the preferred method, and also would add such a cost burden to the site that it would make it unfeasible within the current cost structure. Thank you. Thank you all.
Are there any more questions from commissioners? If not, we will open it up to the public for questions. Going once, going twice. Oh, Commissioner Horowitz.
Yeah, hi, this is Daniel. I represent the single member district that the school is in, and I do want to leave most of the time for the public comments. I think there will be a lot. And I just want to, echo all those comments that I'm seeing in the chat, and I hope those folks will get on video or join the panel and ask those questions directly. But is there a possibility of getting parking from the neighboring underground garage at the Hilton?
At the Hilton, I'm not sure. Dave, do you have a response?
Yeah, so this came up at the SIT. I think it's a really admirable parent community that's out there. My kids are in DCPS, and I come from a similar kind of setting where the parents are quite good advocates for the school. And there was discussion about whether the PTA could rent an additional 11, 12, 14 spaces at the Hilton. Those are available. That is an operational decision, as I understand it, only that would come out of the operation budget for the school. It's not something that the modernization would be somehow linked to. So that is entirely possible. It's an operational question for the school, as I understand it, not something that central office takes the burden of. But again, I think when those questions were asked, we weren't able to share this site plan until tonight. We weren't sure how we were going to get a potential soccer field relocated in 22 spaces. But I think Markeisha and her team has masterfully showed how we can make that same soccer field work in the sunny part of the site and get 22 spaces if additional, and I think it's important for everybody to understand, and it's a valid comment that, and we heard it from the teachers and the teachers union rep, that getting bilingual teachers to come teach here, parking is a recruitment and a retention issue. So it is not a small issue, and we aren't taking it lightly. We understand that, and we empathize with that. And so the parent community, I think, is rightly interested in making sure that recruiting for those bilingual teachers who may have to drive in from Maryland or Virginia isn't hindered by the lack of parking. And so I think, we're providing the same number of spaces. Getting more spaces at the Hilton is certainly a possibility if that's required. But this is we're almost doubling the school here, and we're trying to do it on the same postage size stamp site, basically in 7 stories. So I would suggest that if the PTA could find a way to do that, the school might want to work with them on the operations side to make sure that happens.
Okay, thank you. Does the potential soccer field have the same track that the current soccer field does? Are the dimensions identical to the current soccer field?
Yeah, good question. It is identical within the fence. It does not have the track running around that. We were told by the school administrators that having that soccer field gives them a lot more outdoor use than the track. Now, I know the track is used. I'm not suggesting that it's not used, but they're saying that there's a lot more kids that can hang out on that soccer field to run on the track. And so could we slide that south and get a track around it and make it slightly less long so that it's very close to what you have and get a track? It's just a matter of, compromises and of course, budget and those sorts of things. But yeah, we could probably get a track around a soccer field, but we wanted to show you all your soccer field on the backside of the site. And this is how that size field fits.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting that we shouldn't forget that this modernization includes a brand new gym, right? So in addition to the outdoor space where these kids will be able to exert all that energy so that the teachers can actually get them the focus, there's a dedicated gym. So rather than sharing an auditorium and this multi-purpose room with this dedicated gym, we sat with the middle school assistant principal, and he was like, oh, in terms of scheduling, this is going to be fantastic. It's going to free us up. So let's not forget about that interior weatherproof space that they'll be able to use, year round.
Yeah. So we're happy to reduce the width, the length of the soccer field to get a track around it, and that would fit. It just wouldn't be the same size soccer field that you're seeing here.
Okay, I have 3 more quick questions before we hand it off to some others. Have you considered verticality for that gym addition so that you could have, as somebody said in the comments, parking on the bottom to extend parking and having a gym on an upper floor? What are the challenges there? Yeah.
Oni, you want me to take that one?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Yes, we have thought about that. There's a number of complicated things happening here. We have classrooms that need natural light. And so if we elevate the gym and everything around it, which is gym support, that's going to wipe out the windows on the floor above that. And so if you put the gym up on columns, you have support of storage and office and all kinds of stuff that goes with that gym. That has to go up with it. And that blocks classrooms. Is it possible? It's entirely possible. Is it a cost that currently isn't worked into our pricing models? We haven't evaluated what that might take. But again, we can get 22 spaces on the lot. We can get the soccer field as it exists on the lot. Elevating the gym to get more parking than zoning requires is a question that I think I would push back to you, Oni, if you're overbuilding parking on your schools.
Or I would suggest having more play space and moving the parking underneath the gym, but also understanding that there will be more teachers and they're already stretched to triple parking that current lot. So yeah, that's I'm not sure that 22 is really enough.
Well, so there's reality and there's zoning, and you all are ANC commissioners, you know that they're not always the same thing, right? So the loading dock that you see there, that's zoning. Is it real that a truck could get its way down that alley to that? We have no BZA case here. This does not require any adjustment to BZA. The loading works on paper if a truck can get its way down that alley. To overpark the site is really a question for, I think, DCPS. And the 22 spaces is zoning. We will not need to increase that quantity of spaces by zoning.
Okay, and second question, does the design team, are you considering any changes to the traffic flow outside or pickup or anything on 19th Street, understanding that it's already backed up during those hours? Is that something that's in part of your plan, or is that going to be totally extraneous?
Oni, do you want to talk about your general relationship with DDOT? Or do you want me
Yeah,
to?
so I think we can dovetail it together. So when we go through modernization programs with the traffic study that Studio MB mentioned earlier, we are going to basically have that part of the study so we can present it to DDOT and have a conversation that could possibly support or help to implement any changes to pick up and drop off. The conversation doesn't happen in a silo and it doesn't necessarily say that, but we do say that DCPS does support any changes specifically that will come up because we know that this is a lived experience for everyone in the neighborhood and then for their school. So pick up and drop off zones as well as any implications that we can possibly support through a traffic study. That is all discussed and talked with DDOT, like safe routes to school, making sure that everything works appropriately for the school. And then any final decisions, of course, are rolled out by DDOT. So we present basically like a package, and this happens on every project that we then present and work with our agency partner.
And just to build on that, there is a curve out there that widens towards the Hilton, and you can kind of see it above the word stacks. And I think that I would assume that we're going to see more pressure at that end of the site than currently exists. There is metered parking along that portion of the site, and schools are able to sign curbs adjacent to them for pickup and drop off. DDOT is not going to give us a curb cut or a lay-by, if you know what that is. They're not interested in that. We have donor trees to the right of the stairs. We have historic stairs that are in public space that aren't going to go away. So to put a lay-by or widen the street, I think is based on our conversation with urban forestry, is probably something that I think the school and the neighborhood and the ANC can look at, but it's not going to be part of the modernization. The signage in that is something that operations and central office would work with you on, and the principal's already working with the LSAT and other groups to deal with the traffic on 19th Street in terms of requesting that as a one-way street or other initiatives that might happen along that for traffic calming. So those are independent measures that he is pursuing as well.
Okay, and last question. The Historic Preservation Board has said that the current auditorium is as important as the facade of the school, or are you open to pursuing a waiver to add height to the current auditorium to accommodate some of the space that's going into the addition?
So let me ask a couple questions about that. The Historic Preservation Review Board has not seen the project yet. They will review it in June. The Historic Preservation Officer has seen the project. This is a district-owned building, and unlike non-district owned buildings, they have purview over the interior. So other schools, we have, I'll say, quibbled with them about pieces that they've told us they think are essential in the interior of the building that we may not have agreed with. It is hard to walk into this auditorium and not nod your head when he says, well, this is a pretty intact piece of historic architecture. They have purview over it. Now, the process to deal with impacting that gym would require us to go through the preservation steps of going through you all and then HPRB. HPRB is not going to support removing that piece or impacting that auditorium. They're just not going to do that. That leads you to the next stage, which is the mayor's agent. The mayor's agent adds time and complexity to the schedule. And having gone through that process on other sites, the mayor's agent will not approve a demo of this if we're meeting the educational specifications and zoning. And we could consider, we would not recommend consideration of pursuing that because it will ultimately, I am confident, will fail because we are able to get the program on the site. And so then you have to ask the question of, can you build over top of that? And again, if you build over top of that, you are up at the attic level. And so what do you put over that and what impact? You're not going to put a gym 40 feet above, 25, 30 feet above the grade if you don't have to, because they want that gym to relate to the outdoors. So I don't think you would put the gym up there, and you can't put the gym where the library is and put the library on that. So, you know, you could leave the gym in the auditorium and have a stage that you rarely use because you got a basketball hoop right in the front. If you look at the photo Markeisha showed. So I don't believe that it would be in the modernization effort's best interest to try to tear that portion of the building down because it is so historically intact and we can get the program to work on the site. I don't think putting the gym on top of it makes much sense from an operations standpoint either. To have the gym, you know, that would basically be 35 feet into the air.
Yeah, it'd be taller than the ridge.
Right. Well, it would poke up, I'm sorry, it would poke up over as well, which is of concern. And it would block the windows along that dormer that you see that we're able to gain for classrooms that are along that, looking out over that low slope roof. It would block those, and we'd have to find new places for those classrooms. So, yeah, that would be my thoughts on that. I'm happy to expand on that if folks have other questions.
Thank you.
Okay, I think with that, we're going to open this up to public comment. If you have a question or comment, please raise your hand so you can be made a panelist. Jean.
Hi there, my name is Jeannie. I've lived in one of the, neighboring condos for over 20 years. I'm hoping you can clarify the intent to maximize the rear of the attic. Do you plan to seek a variance to increase the building height?
We do not, no. So we will be, Jean, first of all, we're very fortunate to live in such a wonderful neighborhood. It is really special. And we don't want to impact those buildings that are, you know, as I said, cheek to jowl on the right side of this page and on the alley. So that dormer that you're seeing, that's the long horizontal green, that will be no taller than the highest point of the ridge of the existing building. So we do not have to require, right now, everything they're saying requires no zoning variances. This is all within the zoning envelope.
Thank you.
James Spearman. Hi, James.
Hi, I'm just curious about the potential soccer field shape on the diagram that we're seeing here. Is that shape consistent with the existing soccer field, or is it consistent with the existing soccer field plus the track?
It is, as I was saying, this is the fence around the soccer field. And so there is a striped field in your thing, and you've got this kind of bowed end where the track runs around it. This does not include the track, but it is the size of your soccer field, as I said. Now, could we get a track around it? We could by shortening the soccer field. It would not match your existing dimensions. But again, in conversations with the school, the track is not utilized in their physical education program. It's more the field they felt they got the highest use. And again, as Markeisha pointed out, you're getting the gym as an additional athletic space that's at grade. So you could get a track around it. This does not show the track. You would have to reduce the length.
I have a couple of follow-up questions, and I'm just wondering if this is the right time to do that.
Appropriate time to do what, James?
I just have a couple of follow-up questions to what we just said, and I'm just wondering if now is the time to do that, or is there a different time to do that?
You can ask questions.
Great. So if I heard it correctly, what's proposed in this diagram is not the existing track and soccer field. It's the existing soccer field only. Is that correct? Yes or no?
Is the soccer field being used? Hello?
Hello. Yes, that's correct. It's the existing soccer field, as I said, without the track.
And so when you look at the goal spaces and that kind of thing, that overlap is with the track, and that's not included in these spaces here.
So the curved ends where the goal is, and then there's this kind of space that bleeds around it. That's why it curves at the ends here. But the soccer field those boundaries are the boundaries of the fence that goes around the soccer field that separates it from the track.
Okay. And so the rectangle that represents the gym in this diagram, is that gym the same size as the current gym, or is that a smaller gym or a bigger gym?
So the ed spec calls for a 4,000 square foot gym. That's approximately what you're seeing on the page there. The gym that you currently have, of course, is within the addition, but there's a 20-foot deep stage that is running along the top of that. And so you can kind of see the boulder lines. That's because the building actually steps at the stage. So the gym is bigger than the gym space you currently have.
So what's the interior dimension of the proposed gym?
So the proposed gym, off the top of my head, I don't know the interior dimensions, but it has, I think this has a runoff of
This has a run of
6 feet, which is what you want, so you're not crashing into the walls. So again, we've minimized the gym to what we think is the smallest footprint. And that means that it's within the ed spec, it does have the requirements of the 6 foot of runoff, and that's what gives you your ultimate gym dimensions.
I'm glad you mentioned the ed spec. Can you just clarify what you mean by 6 foot of runoff? And can you just reconfirm exactly what the proposed gross interior dimensions of the proposed gym in this diagram are?
So is this, I guess I can't say how big this gym is on this page. The program calls for 4,000, and we have looked at 4,000 square foot gym with 6 feet of runoff so that you don't crash into the walls on the sides or on the end. And so the interior square footage, I believe, of what we're looking at is 4,000 square feet. Yeah.
That's interesting. So for people who look at this stuff to scale, that's that rectangle doesn't look like that size, but we can do a screenshot, I guess, and reconfirm that.
I mean, I'm happy to, this drawing doesn't have, the interior walls. I'm happy to respond to that more directly once I'm able to check the drawings to see what this one is showing. But yeah, there is a green roof on that gym, and you're seeing that lighter colored green, and then the darker green is just the roof around it. So I'm not sure what the concern is if you're suggesting that maybe the gym is less than that or more than that. Is that what you're saying? You think it's bigger than what the 4,000?
It's just simply a concern for understanding the relationship between what the concept proposed is and what the ed spec is.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that this is a very difficult site to fit all of these things on. And so we hit the ed spec, as required to by DCPS, how they set those standards. So yeah, this is not a gym that doesn't respond to the ed specs in any way differently than any other school across the district responds to the ed specs. So you are not getting a smaller gym than the ed specs or any other school is getting. So
I understand those words and would just really appreciate, I think the whole community really would probably appreciate seeing some sort of publication of the actual proposed spaces versus the ed spec. And I know that that's been requested, and so it's confusing that that hasn't been published. And so, that's the source of these questions.
well, yes.
I was going to say thank you for reiterating that. So I can work with our project coordinator on this to provide more information. I also want to highlight that we're only in concepts, right? Again, we have just began really in this phase. And so as we're going through concepts and trying to make sure that we are, adhering and listening and gathering all the community feedback, I think this is a great opportunity to share that. And as we go through design and confirm these spaces, and we'll be able to provide that kind of request that you're asking for. So we definitely hear you. I can again partner with our project coordinator to make sure that we're meeting any requests that have been shared already.
Well,
So what I would just come
plans
back
have
to you
been
with, and I really appreciate your very generous description of where you guys are. And so my observation is that in the, let's see, I think we had a meeting with the OCC for the school like a week and a half ago or so. And it was super clear in the chat from that meeting that people were pretty interested in looking specifically at the spaces that are proposed versus the spaces from the ed spec. And there was a specific reference, I think it was like maybe page 40 or something from the May 1st presentation that you all shared with the community and different people. And so one of the best ways to create confidence in designs is to provide quantitative information about the designs. And so my suggestion to you all is that you immediately publish whatever the information is about the quantitative comparison between the spaces in the ed specs versus what's existing versus what's proposed. And if you can't do
Noted,
that,
yeah.
then you can go ahead and explain why you can't do that, because this is the concept phase and it's long past time for you to be able to do that.
Noted, thank you. And so, like, again, we'll work on presenting that information. Again, we're in concepts, and so as we go through schematics and through designs, that square footage might shift and change, but to provide a base number of information, like I shared, you should be able to provide that.
That's reasonable for you to be able to expect to change it as you go through those successive phases, but at the concept, there's no reason not to provide it. So thank you for that.
Noted, thank you.
Okay, thank you,
Okay.
James. We're going to move on to Catherine DePrett, but I do just want to point out it's 8:06. We have a lot more on this agenda, so we're going to wrap up questions for this around like 8:30, maybe a little bit after. Oni will be answering questions in the chat as we go through this. But Catherine DePrett, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, everyone, for the opportunity to have a parent voice. I have a son at Adams. He's in 5th grade and a huge soccer lover. The outdoor space at Adams, if you do go and if you do belong to the neighborhood, is more of a miniature outdoor space. So if we're increasing student numbers as planned, the space is going to have huge issues. Teacher retention has been mentioned, is also very, very important to the school. My son currently happens to be in crutches and need rear access to the building. And every day I feel like I'm playing Tetris when I'm trying to move around to drop him off to the rear. I don't know how teachers do it. It's an insane situation right now. So I understand there's a policy from the district not to provide underground parking, but I would suggest that maybe they might reconsider, because if we're facing historical society and educational specs and lights and all of that, it looks like something's got to give. And I would propose that the something that has to give is not outdoor space for children who need to move and be healthy for the rest of their lives. So thank you so much. I appreciate your help.
Thank you, Catherine. Moving on to John Versteeg. Hi, John. John, you're on mute. John, you are still on mute.
John, who?
Okay, John, we'll try again in a bit. Can you
I got it. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I have a question. In your presentation, you mentioned about green roofs on the new structures. Could you explain where they will be? Also, I thought I heard a mention of maybe some new green plantings in the area behind the school where the soccer field and the play areas are going to be.
Yeah, I think, and thank you for the question, John. The District of Columbia has a Green Building Act, and part of that requires the schools to be LEED certified. And so this building will be a LEED for school certified building, and they're doing that at all the schools. There's nothing unique about this. And LEED likes to have green roofs. But more importantly, what's driving our green areas here is the stormwater management requirements from the District of Columbia's Department of Environment, Energy and the Environment. And so everything that you see over the building, so the light green is on The word that says library is a green roof. The light green on the dormer that we're putting up there is a green roof, and the light green on the gym is a green roof.
Okay,
That is short of the amount of green roof we need to pick up all the stormwater management. So Marquisha's team has located additional green spaces in places that are least impactful to the kind of overall use of the site with play spaces and parking and everything else. The more parking, by the way, the more green spaces we have to add because of impermeable surfaces. But the green garden to the left of the gym and then over there on the right-hand side of the school are also storm rain gardens that will happen at the site. And then we are considering areas on the veranda of elevated planters that will pick up rain and drainage as well. So yes, that there will be new green spaces in those darker green areas that you see.
okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Stacia?
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Okay, great, thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Stacia Cardell. I'm a parent on the SIT, and I have 3 kids moving through Oyster Adams. Thank you so much for letting us join today's important ANC meeting. We appreciate it. I think from my perspective as a parent on the SIT, I would like to take some time to review this proposal. It's our first time seeing it in real time today, and we appreciate the work that you all have done on it to be responsive. But I think we do want to just spend some time taking a look at it, digging in, and having conversations among the parent community. But again, we appreciate this. And so to the extent that you're able to share this concept design with the broader community, either through the principal or whatever channels make sense, that would be very helpful. And I would also, again, encourage DCPS to please update the modernization website. We have not had it updated since April 22nd of last year of 2022. So I think it would be very helpful in terms of getting all of the information out there. I will say just very quickly, and we can I can give a quick list and then we can discuss it at our SIT meeting that's happening on the 23rd. Thank you again so much for agreeing to have that meeting, which is just a few things. One, Principal Pineda in his update to the students and update to the parents on May 15th indicated that the design team was leaning towards the cafe, in contrast to what we're hearing today, which is the stacks. And so I just did want to bring that to everyone's attention that we have, like you, we have also heard from the librarian that the stacks is his preferred viewpoint and had some really good thoughts around that. So I do just want to say, a little bit of clarification because it does seem like under this new revised plan that it does have the stacks rather than the cafe. I think for our next meeting, it would be very helpful in advance if you all can talk through the number of parking, how it, and sort of its journey throughout the concepts. So what it started with and what we're at currently through the parking that we were presented with on May 1st to the parking that we're seeing in this now. And I think it would also be helpful if you could describe the square footage as it relates to the outdoor play space. So if we could know what is the square footage now, what was the square footage we saw in that those initial designs on May 1st, and what does this provide to the community? And then I would also say that you had talked a little bit about a trash turnaround and a variance, a potential zoning variance. So if you want to talk to us about that and how that could be useful if there was a variance to reclaim some of that space, will you please let us know? I think that could be very helpful. And then again, I just wanted to say thank you because it's clear that this is an important step forward. Again, we'd really like to take some time to digest it and evaluate it, but it's very clear that you all have heard from us and have been working very hard to try to accommodate both of our important priorities, which are protecting as much outdoor space as possible for the student body that will increase, as well as maintaining teacher parking as well due to that important recruitment and retention effort. So thank you with that. And I'm happy to put all this in an email, but to the extent that we're able to share information more widely with the Oyster Adams bilingual community, it would be very helpful. So thank you again.
And thank you. It was a long list. So I do want to make sure that given time, I want to make sure that either we are addressing as much as possible and but also to follow up in case there's anything else, because this conversation can carry over to the SIT meeting. Again, yes, acknowledging that this is basically a preempt of next week's meeting that we want to share with the SIT, because this kind of screen here was not presented previously. So I will partner with, again, our project coordinator to kind of confirm or to clarify the cafe versus the stacks. I think that, want to make sure that we are proposing and moving forward with the design that we all prefer the most based on SIT feedback. And so I want to make sure that if there was any change that, that we are understanding why, and so we can also just verify that, and I'll talk to Tanya tomorrow morning. Then there was questions, and I'll turn it over to Dave if we have those numbers readily available about the comparison of square footage for outdoor space, as well as for the parking. Hopefully that we have those numbers available tonight as well.
Stacia, you may remember, I don't remember because we've been moving at light speed to try to address comments as they've come up. And as you can see, this is evolving. Were we ever showing less than 22 spaces?
We should.
So, I mean, we just reconfigured it to get the soccer field.
Yeah,
so I think what we did was just reconfigure parking. So I believe we're showing all of the spaces that we always have. We just reconfigured that to maximize the potential soccer field location. In regards to the loading in that, I think, Stacia, I'd love to have a conversation on Tuesday when we talk with you all about the process for the BZA, that would put us into, and we may want to do that as a follow-on so that before construction starts, maybe we get the relief, but we permit it with this thing in case we're unsuccessful, because we don't want the permits to be held up because of a BZA case. If that were the case, we would have to be back here in front of the ANC to get relief for that loading, because the ANC has to weigh in on any BZA. And so we may be back to see you and your team if that does happen, and that's something that maybe we could pursue as an aside, so we don't slow down, the overall progress of the permitting. And we can talk about that more specifically on Tuesday, Stacia.
Okay, thank you, Stacia. Amy?
Yes. Quick question. Did you consider the grade and how that could be to the advantage of, not technically having a underground structure? I know with the hill, there's a lot of interesting things that people are able to do to make extra space, taking advantage of the hill. So I don't know if that question makes sense, but I was just wondering how that was considered in the process.
So I mentioned the DDOT conversation, and they will not give us a curb cut on 19th Street. And so
they won't give you a, what was that? I'm sorry.
A curb cut, an entrance.
Got it.
Street. So they want you to use alleys because they're public alleys. And so notwithstanding the fact that the Hilton has 6 bays with loading right beside it.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But anyways, that's DDOT's stance. I also think that 19th Street is such a wonderfully scaled pedestrian street once you pass the Hilton, and on the opposite side of the Hilton, to then have a kind of, we have to have an accessible entrance. We would not be able to do that if that's a parking garage entry. So
I guess I'm wondering on the opposite side, you don't have the same access because it's also on a hill going left to right if you're looking at the school. So there isn't any on the backside, any opportunities to take advantage of that grade?
Off of the alley?
Yes.
Well, no, because it's fairly flat. We slope from the top right corner where the trash currently is to the bottom left corner is only a foot of the back of the high. It's only a foot slope back there, so it's fairly flat across the back of the site.
Just one last question: are there any appeals? I understand. I mean, I'm both in the neighborhood and have a child, so in the school, so I'm definitely on both sides of the fence here. But is there any option to push back on DDOT on that decision for the curb to try to, make better use of the ground space?
Well, again, if you're talking about putting a curb cut along 19th,
yes,
to do that, you would need to do that where the library is positioned. You would push the library mass. You could come underneath that, but where is your accessible entrance? And it's got to be active. So where does somebody there was a woman, a child's got crutches. They won't have to struggle with the parking in the back anymore because there'll be an accessible entry. If you give that up to the car, you can certainly talk with DDOT about that. I have not seen that successful. And I think, it's not to the betterment of the project to eliminate the accessible entry where we're proposing it.
Absolutely, that makes sense. And thank you so much. You guys came very well prepared to this meeting. And I think maybe anything you can provide in terms of like an FAQ document of some of the items you guys have like really thought through a lot. So I think maybe publishing an FAQ could be beneficial to the community so that they can kind of at least, sometimes just seeing that you've thought through these things makes the design make a little more sense, if that's fair to say. So thank you for all your hard work.
Yeah. And thank you. I forgot to say that earlier to the previous question. Our website has been down for quite some time, but we are working to actually get it up and running by as early as next week. So I'll make sure that website, the new website, and all the information comes out. There will be a project page with hopefully something like an FAQ or something that we can compile to make sure that we're all looking at the same information in real time, as well as presentations and things like that will also be available on that site. So fingers crossed, I'm hoping for a Monday launch, but throughout next week, we will be able to share the link and have hopefully traffic come through to learn more about the project.
Great. Thank you, Amy. Rod. Hi, Rod.
Hi there. I'm a neighbor and I live behind the building. My apartment looks out to the current parking area. And I often wonder, that area is not really secured. Like the facility itself, the fences are not closed. They're open so that they can get the trash. And I'm just wondering, is this an opportunity to improve the fencing and the security perimeter for the facility?
Yes.
And are there any plans to do that? Because
Yes.
right now it's really open pretty much 24/7.
Mm-hmm. So exterior fencing, as well as like security to the building, that's all considered and part of exterior work or just the building project as in total. So that will be a part of our design. I can't necessarily, I don't know if we've gotten that far to say exactly what it's going to look like, but those are things that we typically do consider and will consider for this project.
Oh, great. Because I think that's a big opportunity for an improvement, would be better physical security for the building. My other question is on this soccer field, does the current soccer field have lighting at night? And would the new facility maybe have night lights that might impact the units around it?
So Rod, I have been up there, before it turned, at 4:30 and the sun's going down, the building lights, there's kind of floods off of the building, but there's not lighting around the field that I'm aware of. There's lights along the public alley, safety lights, Cobra heads that exist all along the public alley. Is that something you think you would be interested in seeing? Is this the lighted soccer field?
No, because I have a concern that if that soccer field's used in the evenings or at night, it's going to be a lot of noise right against these apartments where people might be sleeping. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I hear you. I back up to a park myself that doesn't have lights and it always comes up. And I don't think there's anything that I'm aware of, Oni, in the ed spec or anywhere else that says the outdoor play spaces and fields would be lit.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Would there be hours on these play spaces and soccer fields? Like, would they be closed on the weekends and evenings?
So typically how community space or how like exterior green space is used is a school-based decision. So I don't want to speak on school administration. Like we have a certain stance, but then schools prefer, like if they have great community relationships. I know that I'm getting notes and comments that it's been frequently used by communities. So that would be a conversation that we would talk to the school about to make sure that that's something they want to continue or not. But that is a school-based decision, not necessarily from our standpoint. So and so I see the notes here that it is used after school and on weekends by community groups. So if that's something that will continue, we don't necessarily want to hinder that outside of just modernizing and working on construction on the site.
Right. Okay. And another question, those parking spots, would those be secured? Like, or is there going to be a fence there, or you'd be able just to park directly from the alley?
So it depends on what the final disposition and design of the parking lots would be. A lot of times the lot, if it's a lot like you see on the left, that would be behind a secure gate. If it's pull-in parking off of the alley, the fence might be at the front of the car. So, you know, as we work through questions about parking and what the final disposition of play space in that is, some portion of that lot, well, some portion of what's being shown would be secured, and then the ones that are off of the alley would just be pulling off of the alley. Like what happens at the Wyoming lot and all the other buildings, you know, they're not fenced.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for letting me ask my questions. I appreciate it very much, and I appreciate.
Well, it's nice to hear from a neighbor too, because you all live it every day as well.
Yes, thank you, Rod. So we're going to take like 2 or 3 more questions, and then I invite everyone to ask them directly to Studio MB and Oni in the chat so we can move on to our next agenda item. There's a phone number ending in 9746. They could be made a panelist. 9746, you are here.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. Good evening. I am a father to a 2nd grader at Oyster. I got a question and a comment for you guys. The question is, since the entire lot is on a grade and the southeast and southwest sides are being mostly predominantly used as the play spaces, when dealing with a lot of rain, those are the particular areas in a grade that tend to accumulate the most water, which causes more erosion. So I don't have the graphic in front of me since I'm just on the phone, but can you guys talk about your approach with storm drains and how you plan to keep, you know, water erosion from being an issue on the property?
So I spoke to that earlier, sir. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. I spoke to that earlier about the green roofs and the gardens that are dispersed across the site. Those will be where the storm drains will be directed to, because we have to treat 100% of our stormwater on the site. So I'm not sure, Oni or Chairman Dixon, if there's something I can add to that previous answer that you might help me with here that I'm not catching.
No, it just sounds like.
No, I mean, I must have missed that part, and you know, I apologize. I do appreciate you touching base and whatnot. The comment I was going to add, just overall, is the space. Basically, you said it was 25,000 square feet that's being added, so that means almost double the student body, but still the same amount of parking spaces. And right now, as it currently stands, each teacher to student ratio is about 1 to 14. So with double the student body, that's going to go up to 1 to 30. So the parking space isn't so much of a luxury or a commodity. It's more of a necessity at this point, because let's say if DC starts teaching courses in cybersecurity to start training children to actually work in the workforce here, most of those professionals are going to come out of Howard County, Maryland, where there's a lot of military contractors in that field. Criminology is going to be Quantico, Virginia, and both locations are not reasonably commutable. And it's a little unfair if DCPS were to put up a job position, and one of those requirements for that job position to teach at a school is you need to ride a Huffy to work. That's a little unfair. So I think the underground parking, yes, it's a lot more expensive, and I'm sure you guys have mentioned it to the people who have sought out for your RFPs, but if you could just lean on them as a possible solution, it'll make not only the future a lot easier, but your job's a lot easier as well. Gives you a lot more storm drain possibilities and helps out with a lot of ADA requirements, the spacing, and just improves the overall experience in the future.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your comments. Beatrice? Hi, Beatrice.
Hi, good evening. I'm a neighbor and a Spanish-speaking household, and I'm particularly interested in having a high-quality bilingual English-Spanish school in the neighborhood. So I'm concerned about the increase in the student body, the number of students that will be attending at the same time that the outdoor space is being reduced. It's been shown that there are great benefits of having kids do recess and do recess outdoors is an absolute must, is a necessity for the appropriate pedagogic development of the children. So I'm concerned about encroaching into this outdoor space in the school in the current design. Thank you for listening, but I hope you are actively listening and absorbing all these comments from the neighborhood and from the parents, because you cannot have a high quality school with more students and less outdoor space. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beatrice. Ann Baker. Hi, Ann.
Yes. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. I just had a quick question to ask if you plan to share more detailed drawings in the future, especially with regards to the site elements, just given all of the complexities that have been discussed, you know, from bike racks to trash access to parking and outdoor space. Just as things move forward. And I also wanted to understand, on your design team, do you have landscape architecture, civil engineering weighing in at this time? Would just love to hear about that too.
Yes, so, you know, there is a process. Every SIT, we kind of go through the stages of where we are in the process, and we are finishing up the concept design, which is what you're seeing, moving towards the schematic design, which we'll be walking down, you know, locations of specific spaces within the buildings, and we'll share that with the SIT. The SIT will share that with the community. So yes, there is a method to where the drawings will be shared, and you know, we're happy to share. We have shared the plans. Those went out last 2 weeks ago. So the plans, the SIT has the plans of the library option without the soccer field, because we heard from you all and added the soccer field footprint back. But in terms of landscape architecture and civil engineering and all of the requirements that DOEE and DDOT require for bike parking, we are required to have a certain number of bike spaces both inside the building and short-term outside the building. We're not looking for waivers from that, and quite frankly, that's not something that will ever be waived. We've you know, been told of a case with senior disability housing that looked for a bicycle waiver. They didn't give the bicycle waiver. There was one community that wasn't going to ride the bikes. They didn't give them that waiver, so we are not pursuing any bicycle waivers. So we'll meet that. And yes, we have Lee and Associates, landscape architects, working with us. They did Swamp Doodle Park over near REI. It's that vertical kind of play space. If you've seen that, it's very cool. I wanted to climb in it myself. Over by Uline Arena in Northeast, they are working with us on a number of other school projects. And then our civil engineer is A. Morton Thomas, AMT. Again, they've done a lot of knocking on Marquisha's door saying we need more green space for stormwater. So you're starting to see that on the plans. So yes, they have already started to give input. We have traffic engineer who is helping us with the traffic counts, as well as the delivery maneuvers of the trash truck and all of those things, as well as parking maneuvers. We have security consultants, we have ADIT consultants, we have skin consultants, we have preservation consultants, we have structural consultants, MEP. Everybody is working towards delivering a modernized school that, again, is on par, and I think will possibly be one of the better projects, I'm biased, in the district. So yeah, that team is up and running and is working quite diligently.
Great. Thank you so much. I live in the neighborhood and my son is at Oyster, and just, I think I'll echo the request for FAQs and sharing drawings. I think we're all just so excited and interested to see where this goes. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, I see there are still some hands up in the chat, but we really do need to move on to some other agenda items. Actually, our next agenda item is to consider a resolution regarding the Adams Middle School renovation. I encourage you, if you do have questions, please ask them to Studio MB and Oni in the chat, and hopefully they will be able to answer them. So let's move on to the resolution. If you're interested in looking at it, there is a link to the resolution in the meeting agenda. But Commissioner Howarth, I didn't know if you wanted to open that conversation.
Sure. Hi, everyone. This draft resolution came out of discussions that I had with the OCC following the most recent SIT and OCC feedback meetings. Generally, it goes through the background of the project and then reiterates the community broadly, both neighbors and the school community, the interest in preserving the outdoor play space at the school, and I will acknowledge that the current the new plan that we saw tonight it feels like a major step forward towards that. Although I think there is there will continue to be feedback, but I still think the resolution is relevant, and this is just the beginning of this process. That was the major piece of feedback that came out of the first meetings, because it was such a to the view of many of the glaring deficiency of the plans that were presented. And the goal here tonight is to hear some feedback on what this resolution could also address, and to move this draft resolution forward to the full ANC meeting in June. So I am open to feedback. We don't want to be prescriptive about the at least I don't think we at this point we want to be prescriptive about the specific plan or how to accomplish the goal of preserving outdoor play space, and it does not go into some of the bigger questions about parking or traffic on 19th Street. But there was certainly consensus, it felt like, about preserving the outdoor play space, and that's what the resolution addresses now. So I'm open to some comments. One thing that I've already heard by email is adding a request that plans be made public, and I'm very happy to add a clause, and I'll draft that probably after this meeting to include. Yeah, just want to see if folks have feedback on the resolution specifically.
Commissioner Falaskini.
Thank you. So I just note that some of the language in the resolution is now obsolete, considering the design specs that we just saw from DCPS. Specifically, it seems to me that the whereas clauses talking about construction over existing soccer field and track will severely limit outdoor space for students during recess, outdoor learning, after school activities isn't necessarily true if that outdoor space is just moving to a different section of the proposed facility. And then also that all three design concept options contemplate constructing either gymnasium or cafeteria over the existing soccer field and track in the rear. That is actually still technically true. It would just move that facility. So if we were to adopt this, I would, just given that it is technically now incorrect, recommend that we strike the second whereas clause from the penultimate, from page 2 of the resolution.
I agree with that.
Yeah, so do I.
James Spearman. Can you make him a panelist so he can speak? Hi, James. Hey, James, you're on mute. There you go.
Hi, I'm sorry. I just wanted, this is one of those issues where what it looks like kind of from the 30,000-foot view is one thing, and what it looks like from the 5-foot view is something else. And so I asked a question in the chat to Studio MB to confirm that the field shown does not accommodate the existing track, which is 12 to 14 feet wider than the existing field. And this is only relevant to what the commissioners are discussing right now, where we're talking about sort of changing language in the resolution related to preserving the existing outdoor space. But what is proposed, just to be super clear, and Studio MB should confirm this, what's proposed is the elimination of the width of the track and the relocation of the field, but the elimination of the width of the track. And so I just hope that everyone, from the conversation, I hope that everyone understands that that is the proposal that is in front of the group right now.
Thank you, James. So I think, and James, Commissioner Horowitz, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the intention was to potentially adopt this resolution tonight, but leave it open for public comment until the June meeting. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah,
Okay.
I recognize that, this we came into this meeting a little bit blind about what the new plans might look like, and so I recognizing that I wanted to consider this at the same time we had Studio MB and MDCPS on, and also have it ready for the June meeting so that we can get this adopted in time to really influence the sign process.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I think it's good that we get this out there, and I think the intention of it is good. So, Stacia?
Hi, everyone. Thanks again so much. So to just speak to this resolution for a moment. So as it was being circulated among the ANC commissioners, at that time, there was no alternative proposal or plans that anyone within the Oyster Adams bilingual community nor the ANC had seen. So I do want to just explain that piece of it, and that it was only once the ANC resolution was in circulation that we did receive communication more than 48 hours later from the principal that there would be an alternative proposal shown to this ANC tonight. I do think my recommendation would be to leave this resolution open for comment, just as Daniel rightly said, and then we can spend the time between now and the full ANC committee meeting to perfect the resolution and to make any changes necessary as we continue this process. So, and I say that with the utmost respect. So thank you so much. We really appreciate your consideration and all of your support among the ANC as well too. So thank you.
All right, great. Thank you, Stacia. I appreciate it. Commissioner Falaskini?
Thank you, Stacia. I appreciate that as well. I just, point of order, we have to pass a resolution in order to have something before the full commission in June. So even if we do pass it with a couple of modifications, it can still be left open for community change and input during that period. We will just then have something to actually act upon at our ANC meeting. But if we don't pass something this evening, then we'll have to wait until our PZT meeting in June and wouldn't be able to pass something until July. And that seems out of line with the timeline that we're working on. So I would recommend, as a point of order, that we just, even if it's imperfect, we work on passing something this evening. Spend the next 3 weeks working with the community to make sure that we have resolutions in place, or that we have edits and additions in place before the ABC meeting, and then pass those in the moment at the full ANC meeting in June. That makes sense. I'm sorry, I'm tired.
Well, that does make sense. And just a note here for Commissioner Horowitz. I believe I had to do this with the last resolution. If you, and I know you're not at your computer now, and I can send this to an email, but if you go to File, share and then hit that publish to the web button, that actually allows people to make comments on it. I think that was a really helpful tool the last time. If it's helpful for you, I can throw that in an email unless you can just remember those directions. I think that was an issue I ran into with
Yeah,
the
I'm very
last.
happy to do that. When I'm on a computer, I apologize that it's 2:45 in the morning where I'm located.
Yes. So with that, let's I motion to adopt this with certain amendments we just spoke about and to leave this open for public comment until the full ANC meeting in early June. Can someone second that?
I second that motion.
Yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Abstentions. All right, the motion passes.
Can I ask just one question?
Sure.
About the process now moving forward. So obviously we've already taken comments to heart and will continue to do so and work with the community. But as Mr. Faustini mentioned, to get in front of the June hearing, are we going to come back in front of you all at a special meeting, or are we going to bring that to the ANC for the conversation at the ANC on June 4th or 7th? What's happening in the next 3 weeks to get us to the ANC? Are we going to spend an hour going through this again at the ANC?
I mean, I think, yeah, Commissioner Falskini.
Normally it's abbreviated conversation at the ANC itself. This tends to be the more public discussion where we get into the nuts and bolts. And then when we get into the ANC, maybe we'll ask for like a 5-minute top line, like summary, and then go to action by the ANC.
Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. I just want to make sure it was clear.
Yep.
Makes sense. We appreciate
Totally.
it.
That makes sense. Okay. Well, thank you, Studio MB and Oni. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it for taking your time out of this afternoon to be here with us.
Thank you.
So with that, we're going to move on to the presentation regarding upgrades to the Champlain Street substation. If you are here to present about that, please raise your hand so we can make you a panelist. Commissioner Felskini, did you have something? Okay.
Well, while we're waiting for that, I just wanted to take a moment to recognize Commissioner Michelson Horowitz for his work on this. He has taken this meeting internationally on his phone. He has been still so available to the public, and I think he just deserves a huge shout out for the incredible work that he's done for the community. So thank you so much, Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Horowitz. Great. Well, Craig, thank you so much for being here. Christine Trevois, thank you so much for being here.
Hello.
So now the floor is yours. Take it away.
Yes, thank you very much. And good evening to the ANC PZT committee. I do have other members of my team who are here as well. I'm not sure if Craig Wright has been advanced to panelist, and then also I believe Mr. Gus Hamilton and Totlin is on the line as well.
We have a Christine and Craig and yourself. No one else has raised their hand to be a panelist, but feel free to just get started, and if they raise their hand, we will make them a panelist.
Okay, no, thank you very much. Let's see here. Let me share my screen. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, no, thank you so very much. And I really do appreciate the opportunity to come before you today to talk about where we are with the Champlain substation. And Ms. Christy Scheiker, as well as Mr. Craig Wright, are part of our team who are going to be working with us to make sure that we're upgrading the substation appropriately. And they're here to answer questions and sort of walk you through, particularly Mr. Craig Wright, what we're actually doing at the substation in terms of our conceptual design. So for those who may not know, our upgrade to the Champlain substation is part of a much larger project, which is called the Capital Grid Project. I know a lot of you all might have seen some of the construction work taking place on V Street and along 16th Street. This project calls for us to build a 10-mile transmission line through the city to upgrade our infrastructure. And also part of this project calls for us upgrading 2 substations, which the Champlain substation is a part of this project. And again, the purpose of this project is to increase the capacity of the system, network the system, and then also upgrade aging infrastructure, which when we're upgrading Champlain substation, we will not only be upgrading aging infrastructure, but also increasing the capacity of the facility. And as many of y'all may know, who've lived in the area for a long time, this substation, of course, has been here, of course, since 1930. It served the community well, but of course, we will need to upgrade it to make sure that it is actually in supporting the reliability in the area. And although we have not had any construction on the substation, and you've seen construction in the area, in the street with the transmission line, there has been some activity as far as with approvals for getting the project started. As many of you may know, the project, the substation was nominated as a historic landmark in February of 2018. We actually went to the BZA and received approval for special exception for our special exception request in February of 2018. The project was approved by the Public Service Commission in 2019, and we most recently submitted our conceptual plans to HPO for review actually last month. We anticipate the substation to be in construction starting somewhere in 2025 and then concluding construction in 2028. The mural that is currently on the substation at this point in time, this side of the building that has the mural will be demolished. And of course, we'll work with the community to come up with a new painting that represents the community. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Craig Wright, who is with McKissick & McKissick. He was one of the senior project architects, and he's going to walk you through our conceptual plans and what we hope to do with the substation.
Thank you, DeForest. I've actually been with the project since the BZA submission was approved, so I've been around through the years of this project, so I have a pretty good history on it. I just want to run through sort of 3 things this evening. One is just to take you through what the existing conditions are, just to sort of refresh your memories about the substation. Then talk about the areas that will be saved and preserved through the construction. And then we have a few images of what the final project will look like. So this, of course, is a site plan of the project. The substation is the largest orange box on the screen, and it's bounded by Champlain to the west, Old Morgan School Street to the north, and Ontario Road to the east. The other orange boxes on the screen are actually, if you've driven around this site, you'll see a lot of electrical equipment that's being hung off of steel structures. And so that's what the other orange boxes on this screen represent. These aren't really full buildings per se, but they are those large electrical structures that are housing equipment. If you go to the next slide, DeForest. Okay. Oh, I also want to mention that right now the existing substation, the footprint of the existing building is about 4,000 square feet. Just keep that in mind when we talk about the new building. So here are two of the existing views. One that Traverse already mentioned from Old Morgan School Place and Champlain. You see the mural on the existing side of the building that's there currently. And then the west facade on Champlain will be the major facade that gets saved and restored to a better condition than it is now. And then the lower view is also from Old Morgan School Place. And this is that electrical equipment that I'm talking about towards the back of the site that's hung off of this steel structural system. This will also be improved through the course of the project as well. If you can go to the next slide, Treforest. So these are some blow-ups of the existing conditions. This is the west facade facing Champlain Street. And this facade is actually the most interesting one, I think, with the three bay windows that we have here. Through the preservation of the building, the security grills will be taken off of these windows, and the windows will be fully restored behind these security screens, as well as the masonry and the stonework on this facade will be restored to pristine condition. Next slide. The top picture here is the other interesting part of the building. Currently, there are 6 buttresses on this side of the building, which I think previously had different types of equipment in between each buttress. And so we're looking to save some of those buttresses through the project, which I'll explain as we move on. And then once again, down below, we have that mural on this side of the building that we're going to try to create new places for new murals as the project moves forward. So again, this is a view from Champlain and Old Morgan School Street. And the area with the number 1 on it here is the large area on the west facade that will be restored and preserved. And this is the part that will be held up by structure during the demolition of the rest of the building so that this facade can be saved. And then the number 2 here is the large portion of the substation that will be demolished during the course of the project. Next slide. And then this is the view from Champlain Street. And again, here, the area outlined in red with the number 1 and 2 are the areas that will be saved and preserved during the construction of the project. And the remaining parts of the substation will be demolished. Next slide. And so this is the view of the new project. And you can see the west facade of Champlain has been restored and is in a slightly darker brick color. And the stone at the top and bottom of the facade will also be restored. And then the new substation along Old Morgan Street there will be an improvement here because this side will now be a brick facade and not the sort of the plaster facade that is there now. And then between these pilasters are areas where we can create a wall surface for new murals to take place with perhaps more than one artist if you break this out to 4 or 5 different wall panels. And also with this side, we've been working with historic preservation to make sure that the parapet and the base of the building continue around the corner on this elevation so that the end product will look like a unified building in the end. Next slide. And then this is a side, again, from the west on Champlain Street. And again, we're saving that west facade. And then the first 2 buttresses on the existing building are the buttresses that we will save. And then the rest of the wall that you see here will be from a new substation. Again, as with the previous project, we have GAR requirements for maintaining the water runoff on the project. So we are using green walls as some of our ways to take care of that water runoff. And then here you see in front of the building is a planting area that we'll have in front of the building on Champlain Street. And we are squeezing in as much planting as possible on the site for that water runoff calculation that we need to meet. And I think, okay. And so this is an overall axonometric of the entire substation when it's finished. And I think the big thing to notice here is that now all that equipment that you see that's outside now will be contained within the building in the new project. So you won't be seeing sort of the uglier electrical structure hanging from that steel network anymore. It'll all be housed within the building.
And Craig and Trevorrow, I just wanted to add, I'm Christine Scheiker with the law firm of Holland and Knight, and I'm land use counsel. And I just wanted to make sure that the committee understood what our application is pending for. So we did submit to Historic Preservation Review Board for the June 22nd meeting for a concept review of this substation design. This is very similar to the design that was reviewed by HPRB and the ANC back in 2018. It's just been a few years since that design has gone to HPRB. So we're going back for concept review, and we are requesting for demolition of the back buttresses. So you saw that we're going to be preserving 2 of them, but we will be demolishing the back few buttresses. And so we will be going to mayor's agent for that. And that is something that is going before HPRB as well. But in all respects, except for the few things that Craig pointed out, this project is the same as that came before the ANC and the BZA and HPRB in 2018.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Does that conclude your presentation? Great.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I've walked by that building so many times. I don't think I ever realized just how quite large it is because I always just look at that little front area. But yeah, it looks like, you know, the design of that building was really thoughtful. I appreciate the effort you put into it. I like the green space. You know, one question I do have is during construction, are you going to be closing any roads to make way for equipment to complete this project?
You know, that is possible that might happen. However, we do not have the contractor on board at this time. They'll make those final determinations. However, if there does need to be a road closed or any other impact to the neighborhood, we will definitely come before the ANC to, you know, make sure that folks, you're aware, as well as send letters to neighbors. And as you can recall, you know, when we had the construction along V Street, you know, there were several times that I came to the ANC providing update. You might have seen letters going out as well. And that sort of engagement will continue. I believe I came to the, so yes.
Okay, great. And then my last question before I open up to other commissioners, is there anything that you specifically need from us today from this meeting, or is this more like a here's the project, we're just letting you know this is what's going to happen?
We are hoping that the ANC can weigh in on the proposed design because it will be going to HPRB for concept review on June 22nd. So we would appreciate the ANC's support of that. And then the mayor's agent hearing would be happening sometime in the mid-fall. It's a process with notice and things like that. And that would be for the project of special merit to allow for the demolition of those buttresses at the rear.
Okay, so you're just seeking a letter of support today. Okay, great. Commissioner Falaschini?
Thank you for this presentation. I think I attended maybe my first community meeting on this proposal back in 2015 or 2016.
It's been a while, yes.
So, and I never did I imagine that I would actually see it through or that I would be on the commission when it actually kind of came about. I very much appreciate the design. I know that there was a lot of conversation about having those panels available for local artists to be able to put up murals. So I appreciate the kind of sensitivity to that.
Yes.
I remember back in the meeting in like 2017, 2018, there were questions or concerns about what it meant to enclose these, all of this electricity. You know, I believe if I can, you know, maybe just kind of put it out there, and also the fact that it's going to be so close to a school, were also some concerns that came up. Pre-K3, pre-K4, and kindergarten kids are right across the street there, across Old Morgan School Place. So I remember hearing concerns about it back then. If I remember right, the answers, and I don't want to put words in y'all's mouth, but electricity dissipates extremely quickly over space. And so there was not a perception that even with the increased electrical capacity at that site, that it would, any of that increased capacity would reach across the street to where the schoolyard is. But I want you to be able to say that and not me, since I'm not the expert.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for, that is correct. There will be no negative, harmful impacts at all to anyone in the neighborhood, the school as well. As we mentioned, and you're exactly right, that explanation is exactly correct. The moment energy is produced and it is consumed is the moment is produced. So it's not, anything that's going to be harmful. And if, in fact, Pepco has about 49 substations throughout the district, and this is how we pretty much distribute power to your neighborhood. The project that we have as part of Capital Grid is the Mount Vernon substation, which is actually a new substation we're actually constructing in the Northwest 1 Mount Vernon area. And it is actually right across the street from Walker Jones Education Campus. You pass by substations all the time. There's one, attached to the Marriott Marquis Hotel. They're part of our daily life, how we actually distribute power. And, having the building enclosed actually will provide another level of safety around the building. I'm not sure if many of you all have heard about some of the shootings that have happened in Washington State as well as North Carolina, where there was an event where someone actually damaged one of the equipment, and it was outside, it wasn't enclosed. So part of us doing that is making sure that we don't have that outside equipment. It's with newer equipment that is able to be more confined, but it's enclosed as well for safety as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And I guess my final concern here is just the current building is not well maintained. It is quite derelict. There's a lot of broken glass around it. The street isn't well maintained. The front of the space isn't well maintained. I really appreciate all the green space that's getting built into this design. But the site has to be better maintained. And Pepco really needs to get the message that it can't just build these new facilities and then leave them derelict to attract broken glass and loiterers. It has to be maintained better. I think there's also a comment that just came up. The sidewalk also, I've raised it several times with the mayor's office, and I think also with Utrevoice, that the sidewalk in front of the site is a total disaster. So I'm happy that this will be rebuilt. I really appreciate it. I also hope that the message will get sent to Pepco that the site has to be better maintained in the future.
And thank you so very much for that comment and for sharing that. Definitely, we are, the site should not look the way it does. Hearing you describe it, I will actually reach out to our substation maintenance representative and get someone to clean the area. So thank you for sharing that. But, part of us upgrading the substation, it is going to have a newer look and feel, but still, referencing that historical aspect. But we will have beautification around the site. There's going to be green walls, also shrubbery and everything like that, to make sure that it's more updated and more aesthetically pleasing to the neighborhood. One of the things that I know that you did reach out to me about is the sidewalk. Unfortunately, we don't have the authority to do that on our own. We have to go through DDOT, and they actually permit us to do that. So I can share that with them and have them actually, take a look at this. However, when we do construct the substation, there will be a better looking surface on the inside, and as I said, beautification as well.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question off of what Commissioner Falaschini said. So will you be securing like a garden contract for a company to come in and maintain that space once you're done with construction?
I will have to follow up with you on that. We do have our environmental team, and actually let me share my screen because there is I would like you all to see, and if you can look. here. Let's see. Here's the actual site plan, where there will be trees, there will be shrubbery, both on the outside and the inside. And so we will maintain everything within our property. I believe there will be tree boxes here as well, so that these trees can be planted. And then I believe this area here is still internal inside the gate, but it will be for our green area ratio and retention tank as well.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. If there are no more questions from commissioners, I see one hand up, Kristen Barden. Hi, Kristen.
Hi, Kristen.
Hey, Trevorris, how are you? Nice to see you.
Bless, how are you? Nice to see you as
Good.
well.
Good. Maybe I missed this in one of the slides, but I was just curious when you think construction will begin and how long that will last.
We anticipate construction starting around 2025. Not sure exactly which month, but it will be in 2025, and it will last until 2028. Now, there will be significant, construction taking place. We don't have a contractor at this time, but again, I want to make sure to know that there might be a possibility that we may have to close a road. Not sure, when or where. We'll have to know more specifics around that once the contractor is onboarded.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Amy? Hi, Amy.
Hey, yeah, this is probably a dumb question, but is there any ability to provide other like services for the neighborhood as part of the construction? I know I'm just piling on from the previous conversation, but like say a underground parking garage for DCPS teachers, like, but I mean, I get it's a public service already to get the utility routing, but I'm just wondering if like while Pepco is making the investment, if they could also make other investments in the community.
And you know what? I thank you very much for that question. And actually, we do make investments throughout the entire district. Every resident I know, in particular in this area as well. And a lot of times we're participating in some of the festivals supporting businesses. I know for many years we participated in the Adams Morgan bid. And so one of the things that we will also do as far as with this project is make sure that we are involved in the community as part of the construction. So we will establish a community advisory group so that any suggestions that you have in regards to the construction and just with this project in general, we want to definitely partner with the community. But I'll take that, get feedback and follow back up.
All right, thank you so much. So I don't see any more hands up. Commissioner Jones?
Yes. What about current process of making sure the grounds are kept? Is there someone? Yeah, you understand what I'm saying?
No, yes, I will actually, as I stated before, reach out to someone who is responsible for maintaining our properties and making sure that they're clean. So I will follow up with the appropriate team member to address that.
I mean, if there was a schedule, but you don't know about if there's a schedule for them to do that.
No. What I can inquire and see exactly when they can come and clean it up, and it will be soon. But I can follow up with you on that date. Okay. But I will be speaking with them tomorrow and follow up and let you all know.
Yeah, excuse me. When I said schedule, I meant ongoing schedule, not just a one-shot deal.
Okay. I can follow back up with you and let you know.
Okay.
I just don't know that information right offhand. But what I can do is follow up with you and inquire with our internal personnel and inquire if there can be a schedule. Right. And so I will share that with them.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, with that, I would like to propose that I would like to motion that we provide a letter of support for this project.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All those against say nay. Abstentions. All right, the motion passes 5-0. So we will get that letter of support out.
Thank you so much.
Travis, Greg, Christine, thank you so much for being here. It's very exciting that you're going to enclose those power lines. I'm sure the people living around that will greatly appreciate that. All right, moving right along. Next up, we have a presentation regarding a 2-story rear garage addition and raising of an existing accessory structure at 1832 Ontario Place Northwest. If you are presenting about that, please raise your hand. Marty Sullivan, we see you. Dave Bloom, we see you. Welcome, Marty and Dave. The floor is yours.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you for your patience. We appreciate it.
Excuse the foggy background. I don't know why it's so fuzzy there, but so my name is Marty Sullivan. I'm land use counsel for James Woodyard, the owner and resident of 1832 Ontario Place Northwest, and he is proposing a rear addition and a reconstruction or expansion of his accessory building at the back of the property. And for that, we are asking for 3 areas of relief from the BZA, all special exception. One is lot occupancy. We're proposing a lot occupancy of 70%. The maximum is 60%. The maximum that we can ask for by special exception is 70. There's a rear yard requirement that you can't have an accessory building in a required rear yard. And what that effectively means is you need 20 feet of distance between the principal building and the accessory building. And we'll be at about 18 feet, not counting the stairs to the accessory building. And then there's a parking access requirement that's a 12-foot setback from the center line of the alley to any building where you have parking. The entrance to that parking has to be 12 feet. And we're proposing that we're at 11.5 feet. So we're asking for a half foot of relief for that. And those are the 3 areas of relief. And I'll turn it over to Dave to share the plans.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Dave Bloom. I'm with District Architecture, and I will walk you through the plans. So I'll first show you, this is the existing site plan. It's an existing row house. You can see the alley side is on the right side. There's an existing 1-story garage, which we are substantially removing. And then there's an existing set of sort of double hide covered decks at the rear of the house that we are also removing. And I'll quickly show you some pictures. This is the existing garage. There's a small walkway between this garage and the neighboring garage. This is from the back of the house looking at the back of the garage. So the alley is just beyond this. And then this is the 2-story covered decks that we are removing and replacing with the addition. So to go back to the proposed site plan, you can see here, this is our 2-story addition. It is almost aligned with a similar addition to the property that's planned south. We're set back just a little, just 6 inches from that in order to just be at the 70% lot occupancy. And we're just a little bit beyond the addition that's at the house to plan north. The garage is essentially aligned with the garages to either side of it. We are proposing a 2-story garage. And there is a spiral staircase that gets you to the 2nd story of the garage. This just shows you the floor plans. At the 1st floor, that additional space at the rear addition is for a breakfast area. We'll sort of repave the rear yard of the house. And then this is the garage level. At the 2nd floor, The owner has an office in this, what is a back bedroom, that'll be expanded to a larger office, and then sort of office space slash, extra bedroom at the second level of the garage. This is just the roof plan. The section, the garage, just because of the topography and the height of the alley compared to the building, is maybe 3 feet higher than the building, sort of the grade level. So that's why you see some stairs here. So from the first floor, you go up some stairs and then you're level with the garage and the alley. And then this is what the elevations look like. So this is, to the left here is the elevation at the house, rear addition. This is the garage in the middle, garage elevation, if you're looking at it from the alley. And then at the right, if you are looking at it from the house. And that is all the drawings we have.
And if the committee would like to hear, I could go into what the conditions are, the specific conditions that the BZA is going to consider. For the addition, for the lot occupancy relief, and for the accessory building in a required rear yard relief, the specific conditions are the standard ones of not unduly impacting neighbors' light, near, or privacy, and not substantially visually intruding on character, scale, and pattern as houses is viewed from the street or the alley. And because we line up with specifically with the 2 adjacent properties, we meet all those conditions. And also an update on the neighbors. Mr. Woodyard couldn't be here tonight. He has spoken to both neighbors and said that they have no objections and they're in support, and he expects to get support letters from both neighbors, which I assume we'll have in time for the full meeting. And our hearing's not till September 13th, by the way. So we've got time. Regarding the half foot of relief for the center alley line setback, that's a slightly different condition. And it's we're see a reasonable difficulty in providing the full-size driveway width or alley center line setback, and it's basically to be able to line up with the other garages. That's why we're asking for that half foot. And I think that's it. I think that's all we have. If there's any questions.
Well, great, thank you so much. That was a very concise and easy to understand presentation. I appreciate that. So one question I have, when you're doing construction, like, are you going to be closing down the alley to make way for construction equipment? I'm just trying to think of like what sort of obstacles you might present to people, navigating the alley during construction.
Yeah, I don't imagine that we would close it down. There may be times where they need to park a truck in front of this property, but it would be nothing that would require it closed for days, or really probably even for hours. And it's certainly, I would imagine, I'm not the contractor, but I've done enough of these projects to know something about it. If a truck's parked there, it's obviously something that can be moved pretty easily if someone needs it moved.
Okay. I'm going to open up the floor to the other commissioners. Commissioner Falaschini.
Thanks. This seems like a pretty simple, cut and dry case, especially with the support from. The one question I do have is about the floor, the FAR, and how much that increases and up to what percentage with that addition of the second story above the garage. That's it.
Marty, do you know where we are with FAR? I don't remember off the top of my head.
There's no FAR calculation in the RF zone. Yeah. It's just the lot occupancy and stories.
Great.
So, but there's a building area requirement restriction for the accessory building itself, but it not be more than 450 square feet. And I think we're well under that, Dave. Right?
Yeah, I think we're three
cool.
something maybe.
Yeah.
My only potential concern. Otherwise, seems totally unfitting.
Are there any other questions or comments from commissioners or the public regarding this project? It seems pretty straightforward. I feel like, oh, Chris O.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, just a quick question. It's a question about use. I hear you calling it a garage, but it sounds like could be an office, could be a bedroom, could be a garage. What is it? What's the use here?
Sure. On the lower level, which is flush with the alley, it is a garage for car parking. The second level, it's sort of flexible space. He's talked about maybe using it for an office, maybe it's storage, maybe a guest bedroom, but there's no bathroom up there, so maybe that's not the most practical use for it.
Okay. Was that the only question? Okay. Well, if there's no more questions, I motion to provide a letter of support for zoning relief for this project. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against say nay. Abstentions. All right, the motion passes 5-0. Great. This is a really good presentation. Very short, sweet, concise, easy to understand. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for your patience again. We really appreciate it.
That's the way we
Compared
like
to
it.
the two previous ones, anything would look short. Probably.
Very true.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks. Have a good night. All right, so next up we have a discussion regarding 1617 U Street. We have some guest speakers to answer some questions. I'm going to call on Commissioner Stevens to open that up with an introduction and invite them to be panelists.
Okay, so first I would like to say, welcome Jason to your first ANC meeting. Jason is with DOB. He has been gracious enough to join us. I'm not quite sure he wants to be a panelist, but he is going to be on standby in case anyone has a question that he could answer. Also with us, we have Daniel Lyons, who is with DMPED, and he has also very generously offered to be here to answer questions. But I'm going to lead this off because I did have a very helpful discussion with the Office of Planning the other day, and I would like to share that information with everyone, and I'll just kind of hit the highlights because I think everyone's getting a bit tired and so forth. So I'll make this short and sweet, and then we can open it up to any questions. And I guess also sort of a purpose of this is just to sort of regroup and then talk about the next steps, which I also did talk to the Office of Planning and DMPED. Daniel was also part of that discussion, so he helped me with the next steps as that would go. So, okay, so the first thing that I asked the Office of Planning, the burning question is split zoning allowed on this site? And the answer is yes, if the zoning commission says that it can and should be split zoned. But the zoning commission is primarily guided by the comprehensive plan and future land use map, which does say that this site should be high density residential, plus the other mixed uses. So there is that, but the public is welcome and encouraged to testify at the June 26th hearing at 4 p.m. And I can put the links in the chat to register, to share your written testimony with them before you show up in person to testify. And basically the Office of Planning said that if the public convinces the zoning commission that another type of zoning is better, then the Office of Planning will be asked to come up with an alternate zoning plan to revisit that and again explore other zoning options. And then the other piece of this is that after the RFP is out, there are definitely more opportunities for the public to chime in than I had realized. And also there will be groups chiming in like the Historical Preservation Board. As you just saw with the school preservation board was dictating heights and different aspects of the project. So they will also be chiming in at that point, because at 1617, there are contributing structures that are historical surrounding that site. So that's why the Historical Preservation Board does have some jurisdiction here. So they may say, for instance, even if it's not split zone, they may say, well, you may need a lower height or this or that because you are abutting this historical property. So that, again, there'll be many forces that come into play once the RFP is released for bid. So, and also, again, as I have mentioned in the past, just simply the code. There are rules about setbacks, there's rules about how many windows, and I know that was a big thing, but how many windows a building needs to have so that each bedroom will have a window and so forth. So there just will be a lot going on after the zoning determination. And I know the zoning is the template, but moving forward after the RFP, again, there'll be many opportunities for comment and shaping what this project is going to be. So now, with that, I guess I'll let anyone ask any questions, and also Jason and Daniel, if you want to chime in on anything I've said, then just go for it.
Commissioner Jones.
Yes, I just happened to see the mock-up or the proposal for the building, and I was quite alarmed at the size. If we're talking the 10-foot structure that takes up 2 blocks, that's what we're talking about. It's not 10 foot, 10-story.
Right, that is the project, and what is currently being proposed as it goes from M4 zoning designation to an M10. So that is a jump, and that's why the community and other individuals are throwing around the possibility of a split zoning where you have a lower density, lower height, abutting mainly V and 17th streets. So there'll be sort of a buffer zone between the larger density and larger height and the kind of more quiet, quaint areas. So that's one possibility. But the reason I'm saying that it's the burning question is just for so long we just didn't know if the split zoning would even be allowed. So that's why I'm starting to bring in experts just to advise us as to what their possibilities even are, so that we have the facts moving forward. And then, like I say, so basically Office of Planning works closely with Office of Zoning. I mean, they're pretty much hand in hand. So we got the expert advice or information from them. So
What's being proposed tonight?
It's more just opening up a discussion with more information, and then also outlining next steps, which would be that June 26th zoning commission hearing, which is where basically the zoning commission makes their determination and it is final. So then the zoning piece is done. So I guess I'm just trying to tell the community that if they do have anything to say, that they need to sign up to testify. And like I say, I'll put those links in the chat, and then I can also share that to the Adams Morgan listserv, because it seems like they have the greater reach than my Facebook page and my own listserv. So I will do that just to alert people to that very important meeting. And I'm also here just, again, to take questions, and we have Jason and Daniel, but it looks like there's really no questions.
What about an impact study? Because this is a huge building.
Yes.
The proposal is huge. So the impact, in my estimation, should go quite a distance.
Yes. So that question probably should be for Jason and or Daniel to answer. I believe the impact studies happen farther down in the design phase. But anyway, I see Jason has his hands up. So
yeah,
maybe he can answer that. Yeah,
let's bring Jason into the discussion. I also just want to point out that any plans that are circulating, they're not actual plans. Those are just created by activists. That's just not we're not at that point yet. Hi, Jason.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I don't have much to add to the discussion at this time. Commissioner Stevens and I have been communicating and sending copious emails back and forth for the last couple of weeks. And one of the things that we've been talking about is really and first of all, let me just say I'm Jason Williamson. I'm an account manager with the Department of Buildings. I'm an account manager, with Wards 1 and Ward 3. And what she and I have been discussing, or one of the things that we've been hashing out is DOB's place in this development. Primarily the Office of Zoning Administration, which is housed in DOB, basically just interprets the zoning laws as it relates to planned building. And so when permits are requested or applied for, it goes to our Office of Zoning Administration, and then they interpret or review the plans for adherence to the zoning regulations. And so one of the things that I said, that I wanted to do, and Commissioner Stevens agreed, was just to come here to kind of listen and get a lay of the land, because at some point, whatever the BZA and or the Office of Zoning Planning decides with regard to what the zoning designation is going to be, if they are willing to change their planned zoning to what the community is requesting, then there's going to be some nexus between what they decide, and then what DOB's role is in terms of interpreting and enforcing those zoning regulations. So really, at this point, I don't really know much about the project, and so I wanted to attend so that I was kind of aware, so that as it goes forward, if there were any questions that specifically pertain to DOB, I could be I was at least abreast and would be available to you to answer those. And anything, as I've told Commissioner Stevens, anything that I don't know, which is quite a bit, I've learned quite a bit today about school modernization and the like. But anything that I can't answer myself, I definitely am available and willing to take back to our Office of Zoning Administration and or any of our other departments, permitting and the like, to get an answer for you guys.
Great. Well, thank you, Jason. Commissioner Horowitz.
Yeah, hi. Just two quick questions, because I think, I want to be clear that when we voted for the resolution supporting the MU10 designation, I personally did not imagine a 10-story building covering the entire property. I don't think that's possible under the regs at all. I personally support a 10-story building that covers part of the property to maximize the amount of housing and especially affordable housing. But our resolution definitely called for greater setbacks, lower heights facing the V streets and 17th Street. So would split zoning cause any complications around construction or a design of a building? Would it still be one contiguous building if it were split zoning? I'm just curious about that.
So let me actually say one thing. So the Office of Planning does not actually recommend split zoning on a site that's less than 2 acres, but this site is very close. It's 1.88. So, it's kind of right there. But that is one reason why the Office of Planning did not go with the split zoning, because again, it just was right below that 2 acre. And I actually have a question into the Office of Planning as to, exactly why that is, because we were talking about so many different things, but it never came around to exactly, why they feel that way. So there's that. But also, again, I mean, I just think that the comprehensive plan is a stronger force, stronger driving force than I had realized, you know, with the planning of the city. I thought it was just maybe more of a general concept and not as strict. And so it is coming into play. So that's why I have to say, you know, if the public does want to testify, you know, that's certainly they're right and welcome, but I don't know that the the zoning commission will be swayed, but you know, again, that's your right, and I will certainly share that information. So I see Daniel has his hand up.
Daniel?
Talking about me or the other Daniel?
Other Daniel.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. So a couple of things, and I may miss something that Commissioner Stevens said earlier, but I mean, one comment is that, well, the first most important comment is there was a comment by, I guess, Commissioner Jones regarding a proposal or plan that he had seen somewhere floating about. And as someone else said, Commissioner Dixon, I think, there is no project now, there are no plans now, there are no proposals on the table now. Whatever it is you saw is just some hypothetical concept that somebody passed around. I don't know what that is, but it is not anything that we are considering. And secondly, Commissioner Stevens made a comment earlier about the Historic Preservation Review Board. I would expect the staff at HPO, the Historic Preservation Office, to review the plans when there are plans for compatibility with the neighborhood, meaning rhythm and texture of materials, fenestration, that sort of thing. However, they would not be revisiting the comp plan designation or considering what would be what we're talking about in terms of zoning issues like height and setback. And what was the other comment? Oh, yeah. Well, I do want to reiterate what Commissioner Stevens said about opportunity for comment. I did present to you all back in March, and in that presentation, I did outline all of the public meetings that have already taken place in the past and that will take place in the future. The zoning hearing, of course, is the next big step and next meeting in June, on June 26th. And after that, down the road, when we have issued an RFP and once we have gotten responses to the RFP, DEMPED will conduct a disposition hearing. That is a public hearing at which anyone can participate and offer comment testimony that will be on the record. And the invited respondents, the development teams that have given us proposals, will present at that hearing to the community. And so we encourage everyone to participate and to offer their feedback on those proposals. And of course, with the ANCs, we encourage resolutions that offer concerted feedback, again, on all those proposals. Now later, after all that has happened, DEMPED will evaluate or conclude its evaluation of the proposals, make a recommendation to the mayor. The mayor will have the final word, and a bit later, DEMPED would submit proposed legislation to the council, and the council would hold its own hearings, including a disposition hearing. And again, the public would have an opportunity to comment at that time on the proposed project. Question.
Commissioner Jones?
Yeah, yes, Daniel, if I could be so familiar, I do appreciate what you just said. And as I said, I was quite alarmed at the vision that I saw for the space. But because the whole space, in some way or another, either in unified form or in the form that Commissioner Stevens suggests, it's going to be, the impact is going to be great. And at the initial part of the process, we need to do an impact study, not in a limited form, but what it's going to do to the people who live in the neighborhood. Will it be an incentive to get them out, or will there be opportunities for them to participate and benefit from the whatever proposal is brought forward? And because I guess I've been alarmed, as I said, by it, I would like to make sure that even at the earliest, in the beginning of the process, that this impact study is taken into full account.
Okay, so actually one question, and this is another question I have into the Office of Planning, but Daniel Lyons, if you can please maybe clarify. So these impact studies, including what Commissioner Jones was speaking about, but also light studies, things like traffic studies, things like that. Is that part of the zoning process, or would that be part of the later design phases?
Yeah, I saw your question. I thought they would answer it, but I'll just say you can certainly follow up with OP and get their concurrence or their own perspective. But I would say that studies like that, I mean, traffic studies are not germane to the zoning amendment case. People making public comment can say whatever they want in a public hearing, but the zoning commission will not or should not give it consideration. The zoning commission will be focused on the alignment of the zone with the comp plan and with the plum. There, as I said before, there is no project now. There are no proposals now. It's not possible to make studies absent a project design.
I appreciate that.
Chris?
My second question earlier was about the opportunities that the ANC and individual community members would have to reiterate the support for lower heights on the parts of the property, and I think that was answered by your discussion about the process going forward. There will be opportunities both for the ANC and for the community to speak out for that. So I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, that's correct. And I will add that the RFP, all the RFPs that DEMPA puts out have language that directs the respondents to engage with the community, seek an understanding of what the goals and concerns are in the community, and be responsive to that. And of course, one way to do that is to look at the resolutions that have been passed. And there is always criteria that I would look at. They have to, in their proposals and their responses to the RFP, they have to say how they engage the community prior to submission of the RFP, or I'm sorry, prior to submission of their proposal responding to the RFP, and how they plan to continue to engage with the community later on if they are selected, and how their plan or proposal is responsive to the goals and concerns of the community, how those have been incorporated into the design.
Okay, thank you. There's a question from Chris. Hi, Chris.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm the disembodied voice on Champlain Street, Chris Otten. I'm really looking forward to some hybrid meetings soon, commissioners, but because it's pretty easy to kind of dismiss people when you can't look at them in their eyes. I want to get at this notion that I keep hearing from Mr. Lyons, that there's no project on the table, there's no concepts, and activists have to fill in the gaps and try to mock up something. 2 points, and maybe you can answer this, Mr. Lyons, but one, have you shared your letter dated May 5th, 2023, signed by you, which says DEMPED supports the map amendment, and this is on the zoning record, the official documents. DEMPED supports the map amendment, which would permit medium to high density mixed use development by right at this location. So MU10 by right, meaning 100 feet tall, 80% lot occupancy. Have you shared that letter with any of the neighbors? Have you printed any letters out and shared that what you are pushing to any of the surrounding blocks? And then second, I'm hoping you can answer, you say that there's no specific project on the table, but then you look at DDOT's report dated the same day as yours, and they say, quote unquote, and again on the zoning record, quote unquote, the existing MU4 zone allows the site to be developed, blah, 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 blah. If rezoned to MU10, the site can potentially achieve this and that, down to maximum 408 residential units with 65,000 square feet retail. Okay, so 408 residential units is a very acute number. So they must be looking at some mock-up. They must be looking at some plans that you have. Maybe you haven't shared it with us yet, but this to kind of this shuffling that the cup shuffling that that you'll get to talk this and do that. Okay, they're using math. Okay, great. So what mock-up? What does that math look like in a visual term as a mock-up? Can we get that? Because if we have 408 units there, we should be able to mock that up so people can actually start looking at it now. As Mr. Jones points out, once this zoning goes through, and Mr. Lyons' letter says it very specifically, it is by right. It doesn't matter what you think, what I think, what HPRB thinks. It is by right. And yes, there might be some nips and tucks, but this will be a massive building. And the law requires impact studies. We're in a situation here where it is going to have a serious impact, and that should happen at the beginning. In case those impact studies show like things need to change, it usually is supposed to happen at the beginning. So, I mean, I know the city's maybe not used to that, but that's what I think makes sense here. It's also legally required. It was legally required with changes to the comp plan, and it didn't happen then. So if it's not going to happen then or at zoning, when does it happen? I don't have clarity on that. So there's actually 3 questions. 1, did you take your letter around to the neighbors? 2, what is the mock-up plan that DDOT is looking at to get to such an acute number of 408 units? And can you share that with us? And then 3, when is the impact study is going to be done? Thank you.
Fair questions. Appreciate your continued input, Mr. Otten. I think you've been on most of these meetings. The first question was the letter. You found it, so it is public. That's why you found it. That's why you're asking the question. I think it's obvious. We put in the application to the zoning commission for this zoning change. The letter says the same thing. There's nothing unusual or different in the letter that anyone would expect. It merely states what has already been done. There's an application by the district to change the zoning. I think everybody already knew that. The second question was, where did DDOT get its numbers from, and does it have a map or a mock-up? And I did not provide them with a plan or a mock-up. I don't know what they used. You would have to ask DDOT. I can follow up with them. I'm sure they did their own development analysis and came up with that number. And the third question I already answered.
Chris, is your hand up from before? Or do you have more questions?
Yeah, I just I didn't get an answer, I guess. So your letter hasn't gone to the neighbors on V Street, 17th Street, Seton, okay, telling
The
those neighbors.
letter is posted on a public website, available to anyone. It
I'm not
says what
asking
I just said.
I'm not asking you
It
that. You
says-
want to, Mr. Lyons, listen, this is a serious change to our neighborhood. It is being pushed by
I
you.
understand.
So please go door to door
I
and tell the
understand,
neighbors
but-
face to face. Just tell the neighbors face to face. Like, it's not, why are you putting it on the ANCs and so-called activists? And two, I did not hear when the impact studies are going to be done. When are they going to be done? In your mind, when do you think they'll be done? Sorry, I'm a little frustrated, but I'm not hearing answers.
I understand. I did answer the question before. I appreciate you're looking for clarity. Studies would be done when there are plans and a project before us, and there is not one right now.
Commissioner Falaskini?
It would be on the developer to explain what any impacts are that its proposal has.
Yeah, what I understood you to say was that that would take place at the two different disposition hearings that were coming up, which are the one that would happen before DEMPED, and then the second one before the council. Is that correct, Mr. Lyons?
Lyons, yeah, there would be a disposition hearing that DEMPED conducts, and then further down the road, there would be public hearings also by the council, before the council, a surplus hearing and a disposition hearing.
And
if it helps, I could go back to the presentation I gave in March and put up that slide that kind of lays that out.
Yeah, actually, if you can do that, but also if you can maybe share that with us so that we can share it with the public and they can see a timeline, because like I said before, you know, everyone was just trying to kind of find their bearings with this project, and now they know more and are more tuned in. And if the public and we in the public have a schedule, I think that would be very helpful to kind of organize it in our mind, and then, you know, allow people to contribute if they want to at certain points in time. That would be great.
Yeah, I mean, I can share the slide. I mean, as far as the schedule, there's a definite date for the zoning hearing, which we've already talked about. But there are no definite dates for the RFP release or deadline or the, you know, the different hearings that I mentioned.
You know, I think that's fine. I think that's fine, though. It'll just be a placeholder. I mean, you know, we can have the definite date for the
I mean, there's a
hearing.
sequence. So
Right, there is a sequence. I think people will feel just more confident possibly in the whole process, you know, if they can see that progression. And I just want to say to Chris I would say, you know, I am a design professional, and I would say, yeah, I believe it's a bit early on really to have any type of concept plan, even a schematic, you know, and you know, the impact studies. Like I said, I asked the question about it in terms of the zoning phase because, you know, I just didn't know. I mean, I thought, you know, possibly they maybe have, you know, in the past conducted studies at the zoning phase, but really those impact studies are when the design is farther along so that you can really study those types of things. So, I mean, I would say in my experience, that's the truth.
Okay, well, thank you, Jason and Daniel, for being here. It's 10 o'clock and we still have 2 agenda items, so we are going to move on. But thank you for your time and being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime. So next up, we have a presentation by the Adams Morgan bid regarding 3 proposed 18th Street closure events, July 29th, September 10, and October 14. If Kristen can be made a panelist so she can present. If she's still here. Okay.
All right, I think I'm here.
Hi, Kristen.
Hi, let me turn on my video. All right, so I can screen share, right? Now, okay. Let me just bring up, where's my files? Hang on just a second, sorry. It's not showing me Word docs. Let me try this now. All right. Okay, so this is really brief because I know it's 10 o'clock and everyone's getting tired. So, but we have been awarded a new grant by the DC Office of Planning for their Streets for the People program. And so with that new grant, we would like to do 3 events, 3 pedestrian zones, 3 road closures, whatever you want to call them. And as part of the process this year, we have been asked to go to MedSeg, which is the Mayor's Special Events Task Group. And on Friday, they notified us that our opportunity to come present to them will be on June 12th. So this was the soonest we could come to the ANC. So I appreciate you squeezing us in. Because I recognize that this now, would have to go to the full ANC for a vote after the committee meeting. So our proposal for this year is to do 3 events, sort of like we did last year, but do 3 events that are really, really event driven, like really around like existing programming, and then there's one special event. So July 29th would be the first date. And again, MedSeg has to approve these dates. So rather than doing a mayor's order, which is what they did last year to close the street, because there was some confusion about the MedSeg process, because this was an Office of Planning grant. This year, they want us to go through MedSeg. So, and so, the dates are not firm, but this is what we're asking for. So the new event would be July 29th. It's going to be a food-focused event. The name is yet to be determined. We don't want to call it Taste of Adams Morgan because Mary Center did that, and this is going to be a little bit different kind of event. But that's a Saturday. September 10th for Adams Morgan Day, which is a Sunday, and then October 14th, which would be our Fall Porch Fest. We have Spring Porch Fest on Saturday, but this would be our regular Fall Porch Fest. We're moving it a week from the first Saturday in October to the second, because the first Saturday in October is open streets on Georgia Avenue. And the city has already told us that they will not support a 18th Street closure in addition to that because of limited resources. So those are the 3 dates. The setup is going to be very similar to last year. Same bus detours, MPD and dump trucks. And then we're hoping to do a demonstration of some portable barriers that we are trying to get MPD, DDOT, and OP to approve. So these 3 street closures, we will probably demonstrate these barriers. We may or may not have them purchased in time to use for all of these events, but definitely we will be able to rent them and have demonstrations. So the grant funding, we think it's going to be approximately $76,000. We've also applied for the additional special events funding through DEMPED to cover the DC government expenses. So hopefully more of this grant funding can go towards programming and not towards paying for MPD and traffic control officers, et cetera. So as I mentioned, the MedSeg approval is required on June 12th. And so I'm here today to tell you these are our plans as we hope to implement them. So, and I'm happy to take any questions. I also have a photo of the barrier if you'd like to see what the proposed barriers are, what they look like.
Commissioner Feliskini.
Thanks, Kristen, for your patience and for persevering a long meeting. And congratulations, like others said. A couple of questions. One, I know in the past, and by past, I mean last year, that there was some trouble coordinating with the organizers of Adams Morgan Day to make these events work in parallel with one another. Do you expect similar sort of problems this year, or is it possible that this will get past those barriers?
Yeah, so yeah, last year because we had to rely on a mayor's order, we had no choice about the dates at all. So this year, by going to MedSeg, we're hopeful that they will approve that September 10th Adams Morgan Day date. We're going early. Yes, that's what we're hoping to accomplish. And we've been coordinating with CC Hardy and Brian Kavanaugh that are part of the Adams Morgan Community Alliance to do that. So yeah, so that's our hope.
Thank you. And then final question from me is, we heard a lot from the community about the large presence, and we had many conversations about this, of the police at these events. Is there a way that we can reduce the police presence and also thus the budget for this event?
Yeah, it's outside my control. I'm sorry. Yeah, the police are going to do what they think they need to do. Now, the whole idea of this project and the purchase of the barriers was to reduce the dump trucks and the police cruisers and the police officers, because the barriers would accomplish the same thing, right? So we're still pushing for that, but we don't have the okay yet. So and no one wants this grant money to be spent on DC government resources, like the Office of Planning doesn't want the money spent that way. We're all working towards that same goal, but we have to get MPD and DDOT to cooperate. Yeah, sorry, I'm not paying attention to the chat or the Q&A if there's questions there.
Commissioner Horowitz.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for pursuing this grant. I'm just curious if we want to see more of these days in the future. What are the best avenues to advocate for pedestrianizing the 18th Street on a regular basis?
Well, it's as we've learned, it's a very expensive thing to do because of the amount of government resources that are required to do it. So, you could advocate for additional funding for the Streets for the People program that the Office of Planning started last year. I know they have probably one more year of funding as part of this federal infrastructure grant that they got last year. So beyond that, I don't know. But this would be an opportunity to talk to council members and the Office of Planning about the importance of these events and how can we make them less expensive. So that's the issue. We spent about $150,000 last year on the DC government expenses to do the 3 events. So it's a lot of money. Yeah. We could do more if they weren't quite so expensive.
Yeah. There's a hand up, phone number ending in 7411. Floor is yours.
Hi, it's Dennis James. Am I being heard?
Yes.
Okay. Kristen Barden offered to show an image of the street closure devices, the barriers. I'd appreciate being able to see that if there's an opportunity right now.
Yep, sure, I can do that. Hang on just a second. Let me pull up that image. If I can find it. Yeah, was there another question that I can maybe answer while I look for this?
Not from me.
There's one in the chat. Have you considered setting up tables, tents on a less busy stretch that could be easier to shut down than 18th Street?
Oh, 18th Street is probably easier than Columbia Road, frankly. Columbia Road would be even more complicated. Yeah, 18th Street is probably the easiest place. So I know that okay, here we go. Here's the picture of the Meridian barriers. So Meridian is the manufacturer, is the company. These are actually these are placed outside of Audi Field. And I took this picture last Saturday when I was at a game. And Audi Field is renting these for each game day. They did not purchase these, but they are in use there. So these barriers are very heavy. They weigh about 750 pounds each. So you can move them with a dolly, with a specialized dolly. I saw men doing it. I tried myself and I was not able to, but there's a specialized dolly that you can use to move them. So the idea is cars approach here and the spikes on the bottom as they fall forward would then go up into the undercarriage of the vehicle and stop it. So that's how they function. The other thing that about these is that square panel at the top that looks clear. You can actually put in wayfaring signs in there or other information about what's going on. So they sort of they can be kind of multi-purpose. So these all fit on the back of a trailer that can then be attached to a pickup truck and parked in a parking space. So yeah, they all together, they don't take up as much room as they do when they're laid out. The other thing about this barrier is there's a cable system that you can also get with them that attaches them together so that they can be spaced out a little bit more. And then in the event that you need to get an emergency vehicle through, you just simply unclip the cable and, ambulances and fire trucks can get through. So, yeah, because they do weigh 750 pounds each. And so they're movable, but maybe not in 30 seconds. Like you can unhook a cable. So,
okay. I see Amy has her hand up if she could be made a panelist. Hi, Amy.
Hi, I have a few questions, comments. The first is first of all, I'm incredibly supportive of it, which is why I have so many comments. I'm wondering if you could commit to tables and chairs of some type. It really kind of locked you in. It felt like it really excluded a lot of people because it locked you into being able to afford, a long-term dining experience at a restaurant. There was really nowhere else to go and sit. So I'm hoping, that's a very low cost compared to what everybody else has talked about, or, all the other costs that go into it. And I know logistically it's tough, but can you commit to something along those lines for this year?
Yes. Yeah, we've already included it in the budget with the Office of Planning, renting tables and chairs to put on 18th Street. So yeah, we will do that.
And then similar train of thought, is there a way to work with the restaurants to provide bites? I know a lot of the other East Coast cities will do this where the restaurants set up a tent. So even if you can't afford to, have a full meal somewhere, you can still kind of sample and try. And it's successful for the restaurants too, because then they get to.
Yeah, the July 29th event, that event, we are hoping to do more of a Taste of Adams Morgan kind of thing. There would not be tents or, food sales in the street. We wouldn't be able to do that because of the need to maintain the 20-foot fire lane in the middle of the road. Tables and chairs, you can easily move out of the way. People that are selling food in tents, that's not as easily moved out of the way. So, but we will be encouraging restaurants to sell smaller portions, sample sizes, that kind of thing, either from their sidewalk cafe spaces or, right inside the front door. So for any of you who participated in Taste of Adams Morgan that Mary Center did for a number of years, what we're envisioning is something similar to that, whether it's ticketed or not, we're still figuring that all out. But yeah, that's kind of the idea for the event on July 29th. Adams Morgan Day, the programming for that will be done by the Community Alliance, not by us. We're helping with the street closure, but and we'll help, with our sponsorship as we usually do, but we don't organize that event. And then the Porch Fest will be a music festival, as we usually do in the fall. And we're doing another one on this Saturday.
Okay, great. And then the last ones will be quick. In terms of the other location, I was thinking more side streets, not necessarily Columbia, but like if there's enough neighbors on a block, like I know our block is pretty open to doing events, things like that. Like maybe considering having the restaurants set up tents on a block that could be like way more easily shut down, and everybody knows where the 18th Street restaurants are, so they're going to know where to find them afterwards, so the restaurants could still get the business. In terms of the community, I'd love to see more calls for volunteers in advance for these events, because everybody loves their neighborhood and we all want to help. And then the last item is just parking, considering access to parking garages for local workers. I know I was chatting with some of the local workers on the previous days and they just couldn't get to their normal garages. So I'm hoping that you can consider that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did hear about the problems with people getting into the Colonial Garage. And so, yeah, we do want to make sure we hired for the last 2 or 3 pedestrian zones. We did hire additional traffic control officers to make sure that the alley was clear and that people could get in and out of that Colonial Garage, because that is like the only public garage we have in the neighborhood. So we are very sensitive to that. In terms of closing off, a side street or a residential street, the neighbors are welcome to get, to get petitions signed and do block parties. That process is already in place. And there's rules around that as well. But the goal of the Streets for the People grant is really to activate, commercial corridors and really drive economic development. So, so we really have to, our event really needs to be on a commercial corridor, but block parties are a ton of fun. And I'm sure you could get, restaurants to come and participate in those as well.
Great. Well, Kristen, was there anything in particular you needed from us at this meeting?
Yeah, so we need a letter of support for these 3 dates, these 3 concepts. 2 of them are, events that the community is familiar with. The first one will be something a little bit different. We're still working on that. So, yeah.
Okay. I motion to provide a letter of support to Kristen to present to the full ANC.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All those against, say nay. Abstentions. All right, the motion passes. Letter of support granted. Happy to
Thank
support.
you. Thanks. Yep. So the letter should be sent to the mayor's special events task group, and I can send you the address for that.
Just a point of clarification, this is moving a letter of support to the full ANC, or this is voting? Can you clarify that?
Only the full ANC, point of information, only the full ANC can actually provide a letter of support. So this is just providing the PZT's recommendation to the ANC.
And Kristen, you just said that would have to go to the mayor's events task group. Is that correct?
Yeah, the mayor's special events task group. Yeah, MSETG.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Kristen.
Yeah,
thank you for your patience.
Yeah, no worries. I'm used to it. All right, take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
All right, so our final agenda item, it's 10:18. Discussion regarding the potential to turn California Street into a one-way between Florida Ave and 18th Street.
Jake, go ahead.
I was only going to take it because I know it's very late and you're on borrowed time, but it was your idea, so feel free to open it up and I'm happy to
Yeah, you
go
and I
from there.
spoke. You and I spoke about I've had neighbors come to me and complain about the traffic that gets backed up on California Street between Florida Avenue and 18th Street. It's the only section of California that's two-way and has parking on both sides, of course. And it's the same with this California on the opposite side of 18th, which is one way. I think it would benefit the traffic flow, or potentially, I should say, benefit the traffic flow to have those California street sections be continuously one way. I think at this point, there are questions about turning onto 18th Street and how it would impact the bigger intersection just south at Florida Avenue. At this point, I just wanted to see if any neighbors had any feedback before you and I, Jake, request that DDOT consider a study about making that change. Doesn't require an ANC recommendation or a resolution. Just the two of us requesting as the commissioners representing the area immediately around it. But I just wanted to put that on the agenda to see if anyone would come to this meeting with questions or suggestions about that, and of course the other commissioners.
Okay. Dennis James.
Hi, I stayed up late just so I could talk about this. But seriously, folks, I would like to be registered as opposing closing, making that block one way. I'm assuming it would be one way the same direction as the 1800 block of California Street.
That was my thinking, but that's not that's the DDOT study would look at that. I think there's obviously both options.
Well, regardless, I think it's one of the biggest problems we have, especially in this sort of just north of downtown area, is east-west ways to get around in town. And I often, if I'm running an errand sort of mid to late afternoon, say, you know what, I know if I go up Columbia or across Euclid, I'm going to get jammed up. So I'm going to slip down here, go on California, and go along Florida, and then go where I want to, like 14th Street, 13th Street, and so on. Whereas, if you cut that off, then I have to go onto U Street, which is incredibly busy, or further south, which, is also just, out of the way. What this kind of thing does is cause longer trips, which means more gas burned, more wear and tear on vehicles and the roadways. So, it really does matter. And if you're an environmentalist, you do worry about that kind of thing, like burning more gas than you need to. And if it's just one person, that's not much. But if everybody has to do it, then it adds up. But it's more just, it really truly is, we can't, I really think that we must not, turn this into a neighborhood of all these one-way streets that don't really go anywhere. It's just doesn't serve those who use them universally. Like, everybody should benefit from it. And I would think that also it could be bad for the new restaurant that just opened right on the corner there. I mean, my guess is that, deliveries, and they do have a little bit of parking, I believe, built under. That was the original plan. Use of that alley that runs between the buildings on that triangular spot formed by California, Florida, and 18th. It just, let's not move to make it harder to get around in Adams Morgan for vehicles. And, that's a large part of that is delivery trucks and those of us who still drive. Anyway, hope you'll take all that into consideration and perhaps get more feedback before you decide to, involve DDOT. And we also, like the 1800 block of Calorama and Wyoming have been all set up to become one-ways in opposite directions, but we don't even know what the impact of that will be yet, because they haven't taken the covers off the signs and we haven't experienced what it's like yet. So it'd be kind of nice to, learn as we go if we must. So I appreciate the chance to speak and thanks for listening.
All right, thanks, Dennis. Commissioner Falskini.
Well, it took a year and a half, but Dennis, James, and I finally agree slightly on this. I jest, Dennis, I jest. After 2 years of working together on many projects, I actually I have similar concerns, and I spoke about them with Commissioner Horowitz, and I think that's why we wanted to open this up for public comment. I had very similar concerns, especially about diverting traffic onto more traffic onto Florida Avenue, even if there is congestion along California, but that in some ways is a pressure relief to the Florida and 18th Street traffic jam that often emerges on that corner. So I do have similar concerns, but that's why I think what we'd be calling for is a traffic study by DDOT to look into it and assess the situation and figure out whether or not it might be a way to relieve traffic, or what what externalities it might cause that we're not thinking about, like some of the things that you're talking about, Dennis. So I very much support doing a traffic study to analyze what's happening there with the potential for moving forward. But I do also have reservations about that spot, Dennis. And so I come at it with that skepticism.
Here, Commissioner Horowitz.
Sure, thanks. And yeah, actually, I really agree with both of you. Like I'm not coming here saying that I'm convinced that turning it one way is the right approach. I also want to make it faster to get cars around the neighborhood and people around the neighborhood, who many of them not in cars. But I just want to look at this issue because I have heard from neighbors about traffic being backed up. If there's a car that is a foot away from the parked cars on that block, it is difficult for two cars to pass each other, and so you get cars backed up turning onto California Street that are blocked by a car that's at the light, for example. So that's just something that I've both seen and heard from neighbors. And I'm also wondering, as you said about the delivery vehicles and the pickup from the new restaurant, I imagine that having it one way might actually help, because it'll allow the car to be pulled over to the side for picking up or dropping off while another car passes. Currently, there's a lot of cars that do stop for drop-offs, and it blocks traffic in one or both directions. So I just think it's currently a bit of a mess, and I share your concerns. So like Commissioner Falskini said, this is just requesting a study, and it may turn up that the best solution is what we have going right now.
Commissioner Falskini.
Thanks, and I didn't mean to imply, Commissioner Michelson Horowitz, that you are not being thoughtful about it that way at all. I'd also just note for the community that we also requested DDOT commission a study on that intersection of 18th and Florida. I think at the end of 2021, maybe early 2022. So we should just resurrect that. It was a part of a larger request that DDOT make safety improvements along U Street between the 17 and 1800 blocks, and also do improvements along there for pedestrian use and accessibility. So this might be worked into a larger study of that overall intersection and area, and how DDOT can work to make it serve our community better, because right now it's not serving the community very well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely in support of having a traffic study in that area just for the sake of having it, so that we know, is this the correct traffic pattern we currently have, or is there room for improvement? I can understand both sides of the argument. There's been plenty of times, even on a bike, that I'm trying to bike up through there and get caught through like 3 or 4 cycles of lights because cars just can't seem to figure out how to get around each other going each direction. I know someone else just posted that in the chat as well. But I also understand Dennis's point that, you know, we don't want to just become a neighborhood of all these different one-ways that might not help. So yeah, I mean, I'd be interested in seeing what a traffic study has to say, particularly not even about that street, but about the chaos of the 18th, you know, Florida intersection in general and how those two are related.
So is this in support of a study? Is that what this is?
I would support it. Is that something we want to motion for?
I would move to conduct a study.
Second that. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those against say nay. Abstentions. Okay, motion passes. So how do we go about doing that? What are the next steps for that? Who starts that process?
I think we just take it to the full ANC then, since it came out of PZT. And if y'all want, I can work with Commissioner Michelson Horowitz on a resolution asking DDOT to commission a study.
Yep, I'm happy to work with you on that.
Good.
Okay, great. Wow, what a meeting, everyone. 3.5 hours. Good work. Thanks for hanging in there. This has been fun.
Yeah, thank you. And again, I'm sorry for the confusion on my piece of it, but it turned out halfway all right. So
yeah, well,
thank you. In fact, I wanted to say to you, Commissioner Stevens, that I appreciated what you did in bringing the issue to us.
Yep, no problem.
Yes. Thanks for bringing the experts. That's a great model.
Yeah, I think, you know, the more people know, the better they start to feel. And, you know, again, you know, knowing they can participate in the process is a good thing too. So anyway, that's all.
Yes, and a special shout out to Commissioner Horowitz for being on this call, even though it's like 4:30 a.m. in Croatia. So yeah, treat yourself to something nice tomorrow after your long sleep in, hopefully.
Thanks. My friend will be doing the driving.
Oh, good. Yeah, you deserve a day of relaxation tomorrow. All right. Well, everyone.